think we're going to start out with a change in our agenda. Is that correct, Leslie? Are we going to?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move item from new business, the approval of the Assessor's Office Fiscal 22 Budget and Operations Plan to be the first item on the agenda.
I second.
And
Aye.
Aye.
okay, so that's 4-0. So, Lauren, you want to sort of, how would you like to handle this, Leslie? Would you, well, why don't we have Lauren just give us a very brief,
Oops. Did we lose Leslie?
Leslie,
Leslie?
I think Leslie's
Frozen.
frozen.
Her face appears to be frozen. Either she's deeply in thought, one of the two.
well, she was asking you to give maybe a quick summary. I only have a few.
If you want, why don't you just, I have no issue just asking me some questions. It's up to you folks.
Let me call Leslie.
Okay, that would be fine. I just, first of all, I truly appreciate the efforts that you put into for the benefit of the town. It's a very important function, and you seem to be under-resourced at times, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just wanted to ask the issue, and I know you refer to it briefly in accomplishments, and you've mentioned it at BET meetings, but the issue of when a CO is granted on an improvement project, that the value of the work, which is reflected in the permit application, may not be how an assessor would value the improvements in that property.
Well, it depends, right? It depends on what it is. So what we do is the building department initially gives us the building permits, and we go out. Depending upon what it is, if it's a new addition, say on a single family home, maybe it's a one-story addition. That's easy because it's all brand new. When somebody does renovations to the interior of their home, it may be much different because remember, if they're renovating their kitchens and their baths, there's already a renovation of a kitchen and a bath. So we don't necessarily get dollar for dollar these renovations, even though it says it's a $100,000 improvement. There was already a kitchen there that had some value to it, so therefore we don't get dollar for dollar on our building permit number, because what the contractor is required to say how much money he's spending and how much money he's spending on this improvement.
Right.
If it's a replacement, yeah.
The question I have for you is there a process issue that needs to be addressed, either in accepting values when the permit's filed, or it doesn't sound like it's at the time of a CO.
So I value things in a certain, this office values based upon, and we base it upon the last revaluation. So if the question is the question whether we're getting enough money from the building department, or is the question, am I getting enough money on my grand list?
Well, I suppose we should be concerned about both. You can
exactly
only go one, I suppose.
Yeah. So we get a certificate. So here's how it works. When a CO is issued, depending upon when it's issued throughout the assessment year. Say, for instance, I always use March because that's easy. If the CO is issued in March, I then am entitled to add that half of that value for that year, which we do. And so we will send out a supplemental bill on that property. And then the following October, I add it on as at 100% value. So the key is when is the certificate of occupancy issued? And then I have the ability, based upon the date the CO is issued, to add it to the grand list, the current grand list that we're in.
Okay, and back to the process issue. Is there something, it doesn't sound like there's anything we need to address within your department on how you're valuing these things. When they come in, they get individually, I'd say
right.
Assessed, but I meant
so here's how this office works. I have three residential appraisers, and I have one commercial, and then I have one residential appraiser who also supervises. So everybody has their own district. So depending upon where that building permit is, that residential appraiser goes out, verifies what is being built or has been built. And depending upon the course or the timing of such, we then add it to the corresponding grand list. If it's a certificate of occupancy, we are then not only do we add it to the following grand list, but we're also allowed to add additional money and supplement the current grand list that we're in.
Do you think we still have a problem with the values that are on the permit applications?
It was my understanding that here's how it should work. If by chance, at the time of CO, the building department has the authority that if they've amended this, and they do their inspections too, and if they've amended the building permits, it's at that time before they issue the CO that they should also be adding additional fees to those building permits.
Okay. All right, thank you. I wanted to make one general statement just about goals, and this is probably a comment I would have on every department head's goals, but in some of the newer initiatives, it would be helpful to see some specifics over the specific actions that need to occur or a timeline so that there is some understanding of what the expectation would be for the year. And then there's usually a lot of description over your typical responsibilities, which unfortunately they're your goal to just do your job, but they're often highlighted in depth in annual goals. But I wanted to ask specifically, for example, the QDS system where you say continue to implement and fully utilize the software systems and implement updates. Are there specific parts of that program that we are targeting that to better implement, or is this just a continuation of better understanding of the data involved?
There's two things. First of all, we are trying to get quality data, and it's really not on this office's end of it so much as it's on the public end of it. What we're trying to do is for instance, we have a personal property declaration that they can actually submit electronically. We are trying to we have about roughly 4,000 personal property accounts. We are trying to get as many of those people to file electronically, and it is for the public and the business to do that. We are set up to do it. It's just a matter of teaching everybody, hey, this is a heck of a lot more efficient, and it's easier for us to deal with it if you file electronically. Our office is up and running. We started to phase it in our first year. We did 500, and then over the last couple of years, we've allowed everybody to file electronically. We are still trying to get more businesses to do that. It's just a matter of getting the people, our businesses and what have you, to come to help us do that.
I recall in prior conversations, there was always the utilization of QDS was different between the assessor's office and the tax collector's office, and different applications of that. Is there still opportunities for better utilization of QDS? And
I think we are definitely getting better, because our systems, when I do something here, it automatically goes over to the tax collector's office. The tax collector office then has to go grab that information and bring it in themselves. I think because as we've been slowly working, that has gotten much better. So it happens very quickly. And part of our issue has also been dealing with sending out delinquent bills. And this year, for the first time, we did that so that we have the ability to actually continually send out delinquent bills and just make our process that much more efficient.
Okay, so the one goal that you have would continue to implement and fully utilize software system QDS and the ProVal system. There's nothing specific that you're working on in that. It's just in the normal course.
Right. And what happens with these software programs too is they continually updating themselves, and they continually get better and more efficient in their own right. So we also have an obligation to continually upgrade, and they go from version 6 to version 7, that kind of thing. So innate in that process is their own updating and making the system more efficient and just a better product.
And just because it's in front of us, I know we've gotten updates, and I know we've tried in the past, but the vacant position as assistant assessor, that's still an important position that we would like to have filled. And I just want to confirm, what's the status of that at the moment?
So I think, and I've talked to my liaisons about this, I think I've hired a couple people here. We have the ability to promote within. I think that's our best alternative for the town of Greenwich. And it's just a matter of, over the course of the next year or so, slowly creating, whether it's that actual title or not. I think I've hired a couple people here that are definitely going to be able to step into more of a leadership role.
And I'll let the liaisons work with that. And just on the dollars in the budget, I assume the salary budget was worked up by the individuals that you currently have in the and the including the vacant position, and that the other adjustments in the 100 categories is just a recognition of the efforts you have for the revaluation and the other support services you need.
Correct. So what I did this year is we had some money left over from last year's budget on our audits, our personal property audits. So I encumbered some money this year to carry forward. And so I took $10,000 out of my line there, but I also increased my professional services in IT because it is a revaluation year. The IT is our licensing of all our vendors and our licensing agreements that we have to pay, but we also have to pay a consultant, Russ Bowden, to come in and actually update all and what have you. And that's there in that line item.
And you still have access, the encumbrance, have you spent that already? Or you just confirming you still have access to that, because typically encumbrances disappear after 90 days.
No, they don't do it. I still have access to those.
No, some of the revaluation money is on the capital side. It might be that Lauren is referring to some of the dollars in capital for the revaluation.
I thought she was referring to the 10,000 she took out of the
Audit. Yeah.
Line.
We encumbered that, and I'm pretty sure that I don't believe I have a 90-day, but I have.
Can check that, and
yeah, I will check that, but I'm pretty sure I have enough money.
But
I won't go over budget. Don't worry. I promise we won't go over budget on that line item regardless.
I just want to make sure you have the resources you need.
Yes.
Okay,
thank you.
that's all I had. Leslie, thank you for letting me ask those questions.
So, you're very welcome. Should we just, do we want to approve this? Should we do that now rather than coming back to this?
Leslie, I just wanted to underscore something that Mrs. Moriarty said. I share Mrs. Moriarty's concern about the vacant position at deputy. It's a conversation that I have with Ms. Elliott every month, as she knows. And I think, in fairness, the individuals that she's cultivating, while very capable and very promising, there's some significant time lag before they would be in a position to be able to take over responsibilities as tax assessor, even on a temporary basis, if something happened to our current assessor. So it's a point of concern for me too, and it's going to continue to be a point of concern until that problem gets resolved. My focus is on page 6, where you said no change, and on your goals for the upcoming year, where you had said nothing about developing somebody to fill that position.
Oh, sorry. Well, that was our, so I understand your concern about if something were to happen to me. I've also know that, and I think I've given you the names of certain people that could probably, and you have, in this town of Greenwich has done this in the past as well, back in the 1990s when you didn't have an assessor here. His name is John Ryan. And he is actually the gentleman who's doing our commercial appraisal work. There are people out there, if something were to happen to me, that you could probably get, I know you could get to step in and not that the current staff, I don't think could, run the day-to-day operations of this office. I think they are quite capable of doing that. But as far as if you needed someone to replace me for some unfortunate reason.
So in the interim, drive carefully and get the vaccine.
Yes, I do. I drive very carefully. I wear a seatbelt, and I have a super doo-doo mask.
Thank you, Mrs. Darkington. I have nothing else.
Leslie, I have a quick question.
We're all concerned. Yes, Andy.
I have one quick question. Lauren,
Andy.
I recall you saying a few minutes ago to Leslie Moriarty that you sent out some delinquency letters recently. Did I hear that correctly?
The tax collector's office.
Oh, okay. It was through the tax collector.
Yes, right. I don't send out delinquent bills, but
That's why I was surprised.
Yeah, no, I don't send out delinquent bills. But that's one thing working with the tax collector's office we are trying to do, so that we kind of make this, we don't just send out one bill and then send them to collection. There's a lot of things that the quality data software can do, like sending out delinquent bills and what have you and do that every 6 months. Some municipalities send delinquent bills out every month. So that just doing things like that and being able to create those bills and help collection and help people, it just helps both offices run better.
Okay, thank you. Before we let you escape, I want to thank you for an excellent job that you are continuing to do all the time. Thank you very much.
So I just like to, add one point to this, that there has been good cooperation there, both Lauren, with her experience and also, a couple others in her office are aware of additional capabilities of the QDS system. So they have been working with the tax collector to assist in these areas, goes above and beyond the responsibility, but it's all of our town working together, and it's the right thing to do to make sure that we're taking advantage of some of these features and information, whether it's to our residents or whether to information for all of us to work better. So I think from that standpoint, Lauren and the assessor's office staff needs to be commended in terms of, moving ahead. So my next question is, which I think I asked before, do we want to take this up for a vote now, or do we want to wait until we're doing the controllers?
Now, I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal 22 assessor budget and
recommend for the BET for approval.
yes,
Right.
I second that.
and recommend for the BET to be approved.
Okay, so that's Leslie Moriarty, seconded by Andy Deuce. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's 4-0-0.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
so I thank
Thank you.
Lauren very much for, and good luck in the rest of your endeavors today.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the accommodation.
No, very, very pleased to do it. So now, Jenny, I think we're going to bring up Tyler. Whoops.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Jenny, how are you?
I'm good. Bringing you up.
Hi, Tyler. How are you today?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, we're very pleased because you're bringing some additional resources to the town. Do you want to explain what you're doing and who's going to benefit?
Absolutely.
All of us,
So
yeah.
the BET in May approved our 2020 Cdbg annual action plan that then went to the RTM. It was approved in June, and HUD signed off on it, I think, in probably August. They were a little behind. So since that plan has been approved, we've been notified that we received an additional allocation of Cdbg funding, the amount of $386,590, specifically to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus outbreak. This is funding that there was an initial extra CARES Act allocation that we were able to include with our 2020 plan, just because of the timing of it, but we found out about this in late September after the plan had been approved. So we have to do what HUD calls a substantial amendment to our 2020 plan if we're adding or subtracting anything greater than $100,000. So the process is to bring this before the BET and the RTM, and then when I do our end of year report for HUD, I just mentioned the process by which we did public notice and hearings and that sort of thing, and they approve it at that point. So we did with a shortened version of our usual CDBG allocation process for these funds. We gave everybody a 3-week window to apply, and then we had a public hearing before the Community Development Advisory Committee on December 2nd, and then we had a public hearing with the first selectman on December 9th to come up with the final grant amounts to each organization that I believe have made their way to you guys at this point. The first selectman signed off on them, I think, yesterday. So I sent those along, and I believe they were circulated. If not, I'd be happy to send them out.
No, they were circulated and posted in our package yesterday, Tyler.
Okay.
So thank you for doing that. Has everyone seen this and recaught it? I think you were emailed yesterday. Does anyone have any questions about this reallocation? or, I mean, additional allocation. I see Jeff Raymond.
There's just one place where I didn't know if there's an inconsistency, but I thought since you won't be still online with us when we come to the Human Services Department, I wanted to ask, 5 lines from the bottom, you have a $25,000 request, which is then recommended for the rent assistance program at Human Services. Later on, we have an application from Human Services for an approval to use $50,000. Is this 25 separate from that 50? Is this part of that 50? Do you happen to know offhand what the relationship between this 25 and that 50 is?
So Jeff, I'm going to answer that question, then Tyler can add or whatever. What they're coming for, Jeff, is the $50,000 from the earlier allocation that Tyler was talking about. And I think the last time we saw or received a memo from Human Services, they advised us that they would be coming back to get this, appropriately approved, the acceptance of this grant. And so there's actually, I think, $57,000 in here, Tyler, for Human Services, $57,720. And I think that we will hear from them once this goes through the process. And
So
then they actually get it. Now, is that correct, Tyler, or that's what we've heard? I think this.
Yes. So Human Services was awarded $50,000 in specifically for rental assistance in our first round of the CARES Act funding, and then they were awarded in this most recent round an additional the $57,720. 25 of that is additional rental assistance. So they were awarded.
They will be coming back to us again for the approval to use probably on these additional dollars. Is that it?
I'm guessing, I apologize, I'm not as versed in the process. This is the first time since I've been here we funded a town agency, but right. So they got the 50,000 and then I guess they have to come to, so you guys approve it as an allocation and then I think they have to come back to have it approved to use for their budget. So yes, so they got 50,000 rental assistance the first time, an additional 25,000 in this most recent round that just concluded.
Okay, thank you to both of you. Good explanation.
So Leslie?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm, and you probably explain this every time you come, but as part of this request, the sheet that you shared with us, there's $30,468 that are reallocated from a prior authorization that had been returned, and so you're allocating that now. Is there an additional approval process that you need to reallocate those funds? Because I believe that the resolution we have in front of us only covers the 386.
Right. So we don't need any extra. The 3468 has already been approved by the BT and the RTM. I've included that here just because we made that a part of the additional 386,590. It was funding that had been returned to us following its initial approval. So I just included it with this round of funding so that organizations who were applying were aware that there was a little more than we originally were allocated by HUD. So that money we would not, under normal circumstances, need to come to you for.
I see. Okay. That was really my only question.
And Tyler, hi.
Andy?
Andy Deuce. This original allocation in Albus, that was also for COVID, I assume, from the COVID round 1 financing?
It was. So what HUD has done with the CARES Act funding is they've paid very special attention to avoiding a duplication of services. So what we've asked all of our applicants to do at the time of application, and then again, closer to contract signing, is confirm to us that they have not received any other federal grants covered under the Stafford Act that might represent a duplication. We don't want to have them paying for the same thing through a PPP loan or a FEMA loan, and then also Cdbg. So Ableist, after being granted that, realized that they had enough funding to cover the cost they originally thought they were applying for, and so they kind of graciously alerted us to that, and we then made it part of this round 3 process.
And obviously the criteria didn't change from round 1 to round 3 now, so that's why you can commingle the funds and reallocate it at this stage.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
That money is up for grabs again, and we've asked that everyone who has applied and been approved for these fundings certify to us that they have not received funding from any other sources that could cover the costs that they've been awarded CARES Act grant from us for.
Is there a round 4 contemplated, or will this be it for COVID funds?
I hope so. I get a report from our community development kind of lobbying arm in Congress, and I think the Senate Appropriations approved a little bit more Cdbg money for the regular entitlement grant. I have not heard anything about another round of CARES funding, but I do hope that it makes its way down the line to us at some
We
point.
need it. Yeah.
We'll
Thank you.
call Mitch.
So Tyler, may I just ask you to just extremely briefly tell us, explain to us the Parsonage Cottage, the COVID preparedness, how that's being used. This is obviously Housing Authority and Parsonage Cottage, which has been working very hard up there, and River House, what it means, expanded nursing service. Can you just extremely briefly just give us an update on either
Yeah,
or both
absolutely.
of those?
Yep. So Parsonage Cottage came to us because they've had additional costs coming in with cleaning and supplies and things like that. And I believe Penny mentioned in her presentation that they are losing money. They don't have all of their beds filled, and they had some people who had to quarantine offsite. So that is really just for PPE for Parsonage Cottage. And then the River House was for they've not been able to have everyone coming in as they had in the past, and so I think they're trying to do some kind of remote and isolated nursing services to some of their clients that they ideally would do live and in person with the whole crew there, but they can't do now.
Thank you for the additional explanation. So does anyone have any more questions, or are we ready to approve this?
I would move we approve this item and recommend its approval by the full DET.
I'll second that. I do want to make one comment. I know that Bill Drake and David Weisbrod are our liaisons to the CDB Block Grant Committee. Neither of them are on the call, so I don't know whether we have any specific comments from them, but I'm assuming that they would be supportive at this point.
I'll just, we'll take the vote, but, I'm pleased to see some of our organizations that we support one way or another through our budget, getting some additional assistance with these funds, whether it's, the Human Services Department, or whether it's River House, et cetera, et cetera. Many of these organizations we also support, or YWCA, whatever, we support through some other method of funding through the town. So this is greatly appreciated. So are we ready to take a vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, those in favor of?
Aye.
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 And aye too. Okay, so that's 4-0-0, and we thank you very much, Tyler.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for moving me along. I'm going to run over and grab the kids shortly. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Okay,
Take care, guys.
great. Super. Okay, so now we move on to the Board of Education ED 6. And
ED5.
5, no?
oh yes, we move on to ED5. I just had my hand. I was busy looking to see who we have from the Board of Education that we're going to bring over. Sean O'Keefe, I see he, and then if Sean is aware of someone else, then we can add that, but I don't see anyone else that I would have expected on this one. So Sean O'Keefe, you're, Jenny? Oh, and Dan Watson. Dan Watson has his hand up, so could you please
Okay,
also
so
bring
Sean,
over-
do you want, hold on a second. Sorry. Are you unmuted?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Terrific.
How about Dan?
Well, Sean, we can't see you, but we can hear you. And also, Jenny, could you please bring over Dan Watson?
You'd like me to bring them both up to the panel, or just to talk?
Both up to the panel, please.
Okay, here comes Sean.
Thank you very much.
And Dan?
And Dan Watson both,
Yep, can
please.
you unmute yourself? Is that you, Dan?
That's Sean.
John.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Sean.
Hi, Sean. Dan,
Okay.
did you confirm yourself?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm
Thank you.
bringing you up to the panel. Wait, just give it a sec.
So Sean, do we have the two of you or do you have anyone else or?
Nope,
that we
just
should
the
be-
just the two of us.
Okay, great. No, I just want to make sure we weren't missing anyone.
Yep, between the two of us, we should do plenty of damage.
Okay, great. Super. Okay, do you want to talk to us about ED5, Board of Education, 103,156.48?
So this is four transfers totaling 103,156.48. Two of the transfers are between the facilities maintenance department, and there's a third one that is a transfer from transportation savings from the summer to cover the cost of security cameras and so on, security set up at the bank building, which we just leased this year. So that was money that we had budgeted for the lease, but we hadn't budgeted for the required security equipment. So we used some of our summer transportation savings to cover that. The fourth one is, again, using transportation savings from the summer to cover 6 art leadership, learning facilitator stipends averaging about $2,400 each. Again, they were not budgeted, but we needed to fund those. So those are the 4 totaling 103,000.
Great. So Dan, do you have anything more to add to this, or are you more the next item?
I'm
on the next
for the next item.
Okay, great. So questions or any kind of questions for Sean? Jeff?
Yeah, it's a minor question. I just want to ask. So the CCTV equipment for bank, is that a purchase of replacement equipment? Is that what I'm trying to understand why that's under maintenance of machinery? Are you replacing a worn out unit or what are we doing there?
There was no equipment there to begin with, so we had to provide cameras for the bank building to be consistent with the rest of our locations.
Okay, and so you normally can purchase like that under maintenance of machinery?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure why it's in that one. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look at that account, see if that's properly recorded. If not, we can move it.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean, just a question for you. How long or what is the term of your lease? That may make some issues too, whether it's operational or capital for one of our own buildings.
I believe it's a 4-year lease.
Again, this is a leased-in building versus our own town or BOE-owned property. So I guess when you're looking at that, think about that issue.
What program is being conducted at, you know?
I believe it's alternate high school. Dan, do you know?
Yes, it is. I don't know the exact name of the program, but it's for older students.
Thank you.
I can find out exactly, Jeff. I'll send you an email.
Yeah, that's more than sufficient. Thank you.
Okay.
Leslie?
I think it's community connections, isn't it?
You could be right about that.
The only question, and then maybe this is a question for Leslie, but if it goes into something like leasehold improvements or some other purchase, it may not be a 400 account. This is going to the full BET on Thursday night. It would be appropriate, or actually no, it stops at our committee. So our committee is the only one that needs to approve transfers.
So Roland, can you provide?
That's correct.
I apologize. Roland, can you provide any response here to Leslie's question? Can you help us on this?
You're muted.
Roland, you're muted.
He's looking. Give him a chance to look.
You're still muted, Roland.
Most of these seem to be supply items and not capital related.
This is the purchase of some closed circuit television cameras in some leased space where there has not been cameras before. And the only question is, I don't think any of us have a problem with the appropriation. We just want to see it properly categorized in munis. And we're asking you really, what would be the appropriate category for a purchase price of some closed circuit cameras?
Well, that would be technology.
Pardon?
We'd put that into technology.
But what account? Is it really 420? I don't think so.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't mean to create a tempest in a teapot here. It's
Oh, it turned out to be a good question, Jeff. Thank you.
more trouble than it's worth, probably.
No.
No,
wanna
we
get
should definitely get it in the right account. I agree with you.
we could call it audio. Well, with audiovisual equipment,
It's really security equipment.
It would
Yeah.
it would probably be in the 300s, right? So if we get it into the 300s, Sean can move it among the 300 accounts if we get it in the wrong one today.
Yeah.
But I don't think you want it in the 400s. That's the only question.
Yeah, it doesn't, I think you're right, Leslie. Probably ends up in the 300.
yeah, probably the 300s because that's where the supply items are.
So let's approve it in the 300s. Pick an account, and Sean can make the refinement of where in the 300s later on. But we'll approve it in the 300s. You pick an account, a random.
Does 307 or do you want 314? .307 is non-capital data and hardware. Not really security, but
What's 314?
So I have can we just say that we're going to approve this with a correction into the 300s, and that this will be determined
Yes.
between Sean and Roland, and they will just send us an email confirming where it's been placed after the fact? I think
Let's approve it at 307, and if the correction has to be made after that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need our approval for a transfer.
okay, so are you making a motion? Are there any more questions about this particular?
Well,
Andy?
not about this particular item. I do have a question about another item.
Are we ready? You're talking about this BOE 85, though, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
my question's on the stipends for the 6 learning facilitators. Why does that appear? Question for Sean. Why does that appear now as opposed to earlier when the budget was being formulated?
It wasn't budgeted for the current year. We're budgeting it for next year.
Right.
So this
Okay.
is something that just fell through the cracks for the current year, and we needed to fund it. We did fund it for next year.
I'm on a Zoom call. Maybe.
Okay.
Are you okay, Andy? Do you have any other questions?
I'm a little confused. The bill you proposed budget for fiscal 22 hasn't been submitted yet. Is that, sorry, are you talking about fiscal 22 or for fiscal 21?
This is for 21.
That's this year.
That's the current year, yes.
Yeah. So my question again is, why wasn't it budget back in late spring? And why are we doing this now? Did something? What changed between?
Something fell through the cracks. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
It just wasn't budgeted, so we needed to provide those stipends, and there was no budget for it.
Okay. By the way, I have to ask. I'm relatively new to this on this committee. A learning facilitator. That's kind of like a helper of a teacher. Is that?
It's someone a teacher doing extra hours, providing additional help to students and teachers.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
so I'll make a motion to approve ED5 amended to change the account code from 54200 to 53070.
Seconded.
Okay, so Leslie, second by Jeff. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that vote is 4-0-0. Okay, so now we're moving on to ED6, the BOE requested appropriation for the Coscob Elementary School HVAC, and that's for $1,477,000. Sean, do we talk to you or Dan here?
I'll kick it off, and then if you've got any more technical questions, Dan's here to assist. So as you
Okay.
said, Leslie, this is a request for an interim appropriation in the amount of $1,477,000 to expedite the replacement of a failing HVAC system at Coscob Elementary. This would allow the work to be completed by the fall of next school year. This project was requested in the 21-22 capital budget in the amount of $3,546,000, and that amount was input back in October timeframe, and it was based on the 15-year master plan with cost escalation and technology improvement changes. So since then, we've requested an assessment of the system from our on-call HVAC contractor. And the conclusion was that we should replace as soon as possible. We did in early November go out for a RFP for a design build. The low bid was including the design build and the electronic controls and air handlers, $1,477,000. So if this is approved, we would reverse the request for $3,546,000. Right now, I believe when the board votes on the capital this Thursday, they will reduce the $3,546,000 to $1,477,000 until, pending approval of this interim. If it is approved, then the 1,477 would come out completely.
Thank you, Jeff.
So
Wait a second. Wait, before we do that, I want to ask Dan.
Yeah,
Dan,
sorry.
do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
No, I think Sean touched on everything. It's as he stated, the original budget was put together based on the 15-year capital plan, and it was based on square footage and really not hard numbers. And since then, we've had an assessment, and as Sean said, we went out for a design build, and the numbers have come back very favorable. So in order to move forward with this and hopefully get everything in for the start of the fall semester, we'd like to get the money in place and the contractors in place now in order to purchase some of the equipment. There's been a mad rush in HVAC purchasing, as you might imagine, because everybody is up in arms about COVID and ventilation. So equipment is becoming a very long lead item. So we're trying to expedite it as best possible.
Thank you. And now I'll go back to Jeff, please.
Yeah, so just to pick out, it's your presentation, not mine, but just to pick out some things that were, I thought, operative in my thinking. Your presentation mentions the lead time is 12 to 16 weeks, so that if this were approved on the cycle that we're in right now as an interim approval, it would make it possible for you to do the work during the summer. Is that the point?
Yes, that's one of the points, correct.
And if you did in the summer, it would be in place for the fall. If we waited until the spring and did it in the next part of the next capital program, the materials wouldn't be in time for the work to be done this summer, or in time for the equipment to be operative for the fall. It would be at best in the spring, and then you'd be doing a lot of the work during the school year, right?
We probably wouldn't be doing it during the school year. It's a very intrusive operation, so
we'd push it back here.
Yes.
Sean, I think you misspoke on the bid. I'm looking at your breakdown. You said the bid was at $1,477,000, but that includes the contingency 12%. I take it the bid doesn't have the contingency. We add the contingency to the bid.
Yes, but I did misstate. I didn't include the contingency.
So the bid is $1,319,000 or thereabouts. That's the total of the two.
Yes, $1,319,000 without the contingency.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I should have said that.
And to Dan, the condition of the equipment now, this equipment is not operative now?
It's operative, it's suspect. And we had an assessment of, just to get it in a repaired mode with no warranty would be, upwards.
85%.
85.
Yeah.
You have a quote at 85,000 for certain repairs.
Right.
And if you did that work instead, what would that buy you? What would I have for operating equipment there? If I did the $85,000 repair and postponed the replacement, what would I have?
You'd have some equipment that we have no idea how long it's going to last. You're talking about 25-year-old equipment that parts are difficult to obtain to begin with. And speaking with two different contractors, these repairs would be Band-Aids at best.
So with your expertise, you're not recommending the repair, you're recommending the replacement.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
And
And they're
Leslie,
probably very inefficient as well.
So
Exactly.
Andy, did you have a question?
yeah, I have 3 questions if I may for Dan. This refrigerant, it's not just obsolete, it's not available anymore. Is that correct? And that's
That's correct. It's not.
And that's going to be a problem with the replacement of any HVA system in any building going forward. Is you have these massive costs because you can't replace the refrigerant, and you got to pull out the guts of the units.
That's correct.
This project, you're not replacing the ductwork. You're only replacing the units themselves, are you not?
There's some ductwork, some ancillary ductwork that needs to be replaced, but in fact, a good portion of it will remain.
And are these units not accessible? I would think if you're not doing much duct work, and if the units are outside and inside the building, you're not relegated to just doing this in the summertime, are you not?
Yes, you are, because you're going to have interference with noise, trucks, delivery, cranes, things like that.
There's been a lot of thought, as you alluded to earlier, to improving HVAC systems now with COVID. I know of one facility here in town that took it a step further and installed what they call a bipolar ionization unit on their system that zaps the air going through the unit, kills all the microbes, and then before it sort of recirculates it. Is that something that you've seen or ever heard of?
We've seen a lot of things since March, including units like that. It's effective to a point. I'm not quite sure it's something that we would introduce to the schools, but we are looking at anything that comes down the pike. We are taking a serious look at.
It is kind of a cool technology. It does kill the microbes. It does kill the viruses, and maybe for smaller size units, it's possible. But I don't know how big the system is at Costco, but it's something. If not this year, we'll see it eventually be offered. And the one problem with improving the HVAC system is if you're not doing anything to the air itself, other than warming it or cooling it, you're not really improving the health that much, I don't think.
Your filtration systems are much more robust than they used to be.
That's fair. Yeah. I'm done. Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
And Leslie has a question.
Yes, just 2 questions. The document refers to 5 of the 6 are the ones that are failing. That by implication, the 6th one has been replaced more recently.
That's correct.
And do you?
It wasn't replaced. It was new.
Oh, it's new.
Yeah, this is the one for, I believe it's the gym or the cafeteria. That's what I'm trying to look for right now, but they didn't have one from the 98 renovation. I think that's when the school had the fire. So
Okay.
this one is, I think, was replaced in 05.
And by implication, just because the way that this is worded, the design build process, as opposed to doing A&E specs first and then going out to bid for a construction contract, is there a disadvantage to the town, to the Board of Ed or the schools in following that process? Is there a downside to design build?
I don't think so. In fact, I in some instances prefer it because it cuts out some valuable time. If we were to go out for bid, there'd be the bidding process for the A&E, and then there would be the time for them to review the school, and then time for them to make their design. The firm that actually won the design build has been working with us as an on-call HVAC contractor. They know the building well. I think it's a win-win, and that we can use a company that we're comfortable with. They're a quality outfit, and they've assured us they could get the work done in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems appropriate in a time-sensitive project to go that route. I suppose for other projects, you just want to be assured that the pricing is competitive, right? So that's the only question that you have in looking at that approach, I guess. That was it, Leslie.
So I have a question, Dan. In terms of the second paragraph of your memo, or Sean's memo, whoever's memo it is, refers to a more reliable electronic type building management system. My questions are really related to two things. Number one, does this, whatever you're looking at, have this? Okay, so that would be a simple question to answer. And the second question, or if not, then what is the cost of that? And the second question is, I remember at one point within the last year, there being some discussion, I think from a group formed related to the Conservation Commission, I'm not sure what the link there was, talking about one common building management system. So I'm going to ask the question differently. Is this new piece of equipment consistent with the standards and the brands or whatever that you're using, elsewhere in the public school system?
Yes, and I'd like to say a cornerstone or a building block to proceed with more standardization. The building management system is, you can put various building management systems on equipment. It's a separate standalone type situation. The building management system that we have I think it's probably 50% of the schools now, is part of this pricing.
And whose system is that, Dan?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Well, you can come back to Roland and just send us an email. Roland will circulate that. But if you can just respond, you don't have to do it right now if it's hard for you to find. Okay, so do we have any more questions? Are we okay with this?
The next item on our agenda is the bonding resolution. Do you want to take that up at the same time, or do you want to handle that separately?
I think we should, whatever. Maybe we need two separate votes. I guess maybe we didn't do it that way the last time.
Okay.
So I will take it however you would like to do that.
So I will move this item and recommending it to the full BET for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, Jeff Raymer, Leslie Moriarty. And this is routine or non-routine? We've kind of gotten.
We weren't doing that, but I'm not. Well, I don't know. I mean, I myself don't see the need to bring them back on Thursday for the BET meeting. But it's up to the other, up to the chair too, of course.
So Leslie,
I'd say let's make it routine, and Mr. Mason can always choose to make it non-routine.
Okay, so as a routine item. So those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the vote on that is 4-0-0. So that's a unanimous vote. Now, do we want to talk about how this will be funded, whether to be funded, out of the capital non-recurring account or with the attached bond resolution? Is there any discussion on this? This, I guess, Pete, you want to, I assume this bond resolution was put together by Robinson and Cole and Dave Panico and so forth. Do you want to just give us any minute of background on this?
The answer is yes. I don't have any background. It was simply through Robinson and Cole and forwarded to your board.
But it was prepared by Robinson and Cole. That's really what I was, make sure that that was true. Okay,
prepared by Robinson and Cole because you've assumed that it's bonded, correct?
We broke up. Was there a question?
Yeah, sorry. And you had Robinson and Cole prepare this bonding resolution because you've assumed this $1.4 million and change would be bonded, correct?
No, I didn't assume how the BET was going to vote on this.
Okay.
This is just a backup plan in case you want to revert to the capital non-recurring. If you're asking me, I have the same opinion that it was offered last month on the 2.5 for the causeway. So I would recommend bonding.
Okay.
Thank you, Pete. I see, Andy.
Yeah, Pete, what's the recent balance of the capital non-recurring fund?
It's still, I believe it was 8.9, right, Roland? It's 8.9, 8,900,000.
It was 8.9, and then the guidelines assumed we were going to use 3 million for the mill rate calculation, which would bring it down to 5.9.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll start the dialogue. This is similar to, but smaller than the South Stanwich project, and I don't know. I think of bonding resolutions for meaningful chunks, and this is not that big. My bias is to maybe just find out a capital non-recurring.
Yeah.
I'm happy to listen to the discussion.
Yeah, I kind of.
So I'll call on Leslie.
Sorry, thank you, Leslie. I come out of this on the other direction. It's 1.5 million. We have 9 million in there, so it's about 16% of it. But we have a placeholder. Granted, the guidelines are not a decision of the BET on how we're actually going to approve the fiscal 22 budget, but we have a placeholder for 3 million, bringing that down to 6 million. As we continue to draw that down, I don't know what level yet I'm comfortable putting the capital non-recurring, but I almost look at when I take it down in large chunks, it gives me pause to think about what the right funding is. At the end of the day, we can approve this bonding authorization and recommend it to the RTM, it gives the flexibility, and it gives us the ability to determine how we're going to fund it later, and it gives us more flexibility in the budget process. So I think we should have this project be authorized to be bonded.
So can I add a footnote?
Jeff, yes.
Just a foot, and just to complete the thought that was implied in what Mrs. Moriarty just said. So you can, we're partway through the year. We don't really know what mishaps will come in the remaining portion of the year. Bursting force mains in the sewer system, things of that sort. If you wait a little longer until we're a little later in the year, then you can make a decision as to at what level are you funding replenishment to capital non-recurring. If capital non-recurring is still ticking along at $8.9 million unused, you can make the adjustment not to be adding $4 million or whatever next year. Conversely, if we have some mishaps in January, February, March, etc., then you might regret that you spent the $1.5 million here and are obliging yourself to try and reach for the funds from elsewhere. So I think it's a little safer to approve the bonding and then to make the judgment on balances and capital non-recurring later in the year, as we're doing this in the spring.
Andy, I see.
It's a question. So if we approve this resolution and the BET approves later this week, would this go to market in January of 21 or 22?
22. It's too late. It's too late for.
So we have. Thank you, Pete. So we have time. I mean, we could, if we want to reconsider this decision, if we approve the resolution today, BET also approves. We have a time later this year if we feel we want to reconsider this decision. Is that correct?
Yes.
The only comment on that is when you have to go back to the RTM and specifically ask for bonding authorization for this particular project. And it's a smoother process to go to the RTM once for all matters regarding.
Yeah, it just to add to that, Andy's question, if you changed your mind, I mean, this is an authorization to bond, and you change your mind, to Leslie's point, you still would have to appropriate it from the capital non-recurring, which is 2 steps here in the RTM.
So the RTM, when we go to them with the appropriation, I'm sorry, Leslie. When we go to them with the appropriation, if there's no bonding authority, they're giving us authority to spend out of the capital non-recurring fund. If we then want to bond it, it takes an extra action by the RTM, and it's just an element of confusion, if you will. To have,
I'm not sure if it doesn't go to the RTM either way. If we approve it for bonding and then later on decide that we want to do it out of capital non-recurring, don't we still have to go back to the RTM to approve the expenditure out of capital non-recurring? Explaining to them that we won't be exercising the bonding authority, or am I mistaken about that?
My guess is we would. Is that right, Pete?
Pete, can,
If you approve this bond resolution and it goes to the RTM and they approve it in January,
Yes.
and you change your mind, you have to restart the process and appropriate it from the capital non-recurring.
So it goes to the, my point is it would go to the RTM either way.
Oh, yes.
It would go to the RTM for the revision either way.
Yeah, but you wouldn't want to go twice.
so maybe I want to understand that, Pete. So, so even if we approved a bonding resolution now, and we decided in the February discussions, and I'm going to raise one or two other things. I'm going to ask you one or two other questions. You're saying if you decided, or we decided as a budget committee, that we could use capital non-recurring, that we didn't need it for other things, we would have to go back to the RTM then and tell them that we were going to use the capital non-recurring account and not bond. We would have to get another approval on the funding. I thought funding was our decision unless the bonding needed to be approved by the RTM. Is that not correct?
Well, first of all, if you're telling the RTM you're going to bond this, and then if you decide you don't want to, at a minimum, at a courtesy, you'd have to let them know somehow. I don't know legally if you have the authority to change your mind and just appropriate from the. No, it would be an appropriation. It would have to come from the capital non-recurring, which goes to the RTM. Would you agree, Roland?
Yeah, I guess it gets a little more complicated if they approve it in January with a bonding resolution, and the Board of Ed starts spending money. Say they spent $500,000, and then we change our mind and say, well, let's take it out of capital non-recurring. I don't even know how that's going to be complicated.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's, that's a good response. I have one other question for you, Pete, though. I think about these things, late at night. And one of the things I was thinking about capital non-recurring, as we talk about things like, we'll say the GEMS, future building, maybe out on King Street or whatever. I don't want to. Projects like that we may want to support will not be able to be bonded. Is that correct? Because this is, sort of their building, or we could because it's on town property. We're doing this and we approve it for a 501c3. So can we then bond it, or, and do we bond, say, the projects we approve for Greenwich Library because that is not our building and so forth? Can you just give us a little clarification what we can do and what we can't do?
That came up, and I think it was the library. The answer is yes. Robinson Cole opined that you could authorize through bonding in the case of the Greenwich Library. The answer is yes, you could bond it.
But that's a town department, even though we don't own the building. In the case of, say, and I'll just use GEMS, we could use the Bruce Museum or something like that.
We own the building.
So you think, well, we don't necessarily own it depends on how it was done. I just wanted to get a feel for that. Okay, so are we ready to bring this to a vote, or would you, do we have a motion?
Can I first, before we move off this topic, I just wanted to add one clarification. Your prior question to Pete about changing our mind, if we bond it now and we want to pay for cash, we have to go back to them for an appropriation. I think Roland's concern is valid, that once you start spending, you're probably locked into a funding vehicle. But at the time we approve a budget, the full BET approves a budget, we are then at that point asking for bonding authorization up to a certain amount. Clearly, we could bond for $1.5 million less and say we're going to spend the other part out of our capital non-recurring. So we can kind of change the total value of the bonds if you're not comfortable with the bonds or comfortable with the capital non-recurring account by making a decision on different projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, quite frankly, I would head in your direction too, Leslie, in terms of the larger discussion. But because I think that overall, while we give the authority to, or request the authority from the RTM and then basically give it to Pete, after that point, it's really Pete and Roland and the staff that's making the decisions of what is going to be bonded and what isn't going to be bonded. So I had thought maybe we could further discuss this topic, but maybe we didn't need to further discuss it today. So I appreciate you bringing up the additional points. And I think that we should talk about this topic more in February. So do we have I don't know, are we asking for, do we have a motion to approve FI3 or do we want to not just let it be done?
I would make the motion that we approve this bonding resolution and recommend it to the full BET.
I'll second.
Okay. And so this time I will call for individual votes. So Leslie, you're voting for?
Yes.
And Jeff, you're voting?
Yes.
And so I think, because of opportunities to continue this discussion in February, I too will be voting yes. Andy?
And for the same reason, I'll vote no.
Okay. Okay, so that vote then is a 3-1-0, and that motion passes. Can I just step back here? I ask your whatever. We approved the community development, the 386,590, but do we separately need to approve that attached resolution, or just the approving of it was the resolution itself? I just want to make sure we've covered everything.
We approved the resolution. The resolution had the figures attached to it. What we approved was the resolution.
Perfect answer. Thank you so much, Jeff. Okay, so now we're moving on to GEMS, release of conditions.
I thought Finance 1, Finance 4, FI4.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I got so confused. We never have two from finance.
Well, I'm being very cautious about it because
Finance
right
4.
after
So
email, right after I sent the email to Mike saying how well my iPad is working, it failed. And so now I'm really keen to see this approved.
well,
I'm gonna hang up, guys. Take care.
Oh,
Yes,
okay. Thank you
Sean,
so much, Sean, and thank you. And Mike Mason has his hand up. Let me just address that one.
Sure.
Mike, can we bring up Mike? Talk to Mike.
Mike, is that you?
I'm here. I just put my hand up because of what this transfer is for, and I figured it would be a good time to talk about the IT. So, Jeff.
Okay, so can we just first,
Yeah.
say that we're talking about FI4, it's a finance, it's a transfer for $18,000 for technology supplies. Okay, Mike.
So on this, I was trying to do, I thought it would be more logical for the BET to keep the iPads current. I know we've had some replaced, and I did a survey on who's using their iPad and who uses their computer, and I got a pretty good survey back. The general consensus right now, and I leave this for Peter and Roland to decide, the general consensus now is to not replace the iPads, but to replace them and upgrade them as need be, which should be 1 or 2 or whatever at a time. Like I have 2 cracks in the screens on mine and my battery's down. So that's 1. Maybe Mr. Ramers is number 2. So that was the general consensus. So however you want to handle this, I imagine the process is, in the past we've replaced an iPad. I think, Leslie, you replaced one. I think there was 1 extra. So they just took yours and reissued?
Right. No, it was it was from,
somewhere. It came from.
Right. It's about 3 years old at this point. It's not brand new, but yes. mine was
so-
replaced from my original issuance.
And I just thought it would be a little bit more, I'm thinking cyber. I don't know what the new softwares are in the iPads. I don't know any of that. I'm thinking about the iPad Pro where you have the split screen where you can see two things at a time. I was just thinking we got the life out of these. We got 6-7 years out of these, and I was going to do that. And that's where this item comes from you, because Roland and Pete said we need to do a transfer if we want to pay for this. I don't know if we need to do a transfer if we're going to continue on the replace as needed mode. That's probably for, but I've done the survey. I did the reach out. Right now, I would say we're probably only going to, I only see probably 3 replacements in the short term.
So do we need funding here, Mike? I think you're saying that we don't need to set in place a rigorous replacement program. We're just going to do it on an ad hoc basis. You've got the ad hoc in front of you. Do we need to approve some funding to service the ad hoc, including Mr. Raymer?
I'm asking Peter and Roland that.
So I'm going to say, I'm going to, comment here. I think that as we move, if we need to move to new technology, perhaps we all should move to new technology. But my initial reaction is obviously I want to listen to Pete and Roland, but I began thinking about handling the budget hearings in February and the pressure that puts on the system. I think I was the one who's, even with this new battery, a couple meetings ago, I had a problem and went into the corner, and I within the last week, I've had a problem with my camera just plain stopping on me. So, I don't really know. But Pete and Roland, do you want to give us some input here?
Well, if we're not doing everybody, then we have enough money to replace them on one at a time as we go forward for a while. We don't need this.
Pete, what do you?
No. I thought that you were going to have an overall, up to 12 replacements, and you need 18. I can't get a feel for how many dollars you need. If you're only replacing 3, it's probably less than 5,000 or around 5,000. If you want, I would defer this item. We can fund it in the short run, and we could bring it back if we need money to transfer later in the year. You could
Mike,
defer.
what would you like to do?
I'd like to replace my iPad.
No, you could see this transfer, I think, would be necessary. If we're going to make the move, what we would have done is gone to IT, gone and put the order in, and then one of you at a time could go to town hall. They'd take yours, reprogram the new one with all the town links that we have downloaded on ours. Even some of our members didn't realize that your iPad that you have for the town is specifically set up as an elected official. It's got all the charter in it. It's got all the other stuff. It's all ready to go there for you to use. But if we're going to do the whole thing, then I think we need this transfer. If we're not going to do, if we're going to do piecemeal, then we're going to do piecemeal.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that we move this forward, Mike. And I'm going to support this. And then you have the opportunity to withdraw it at the full BET meeting. But I think if there are technology things, cyber issues, or whatever that we need, that we are all using these for a substantial amount of time, and we can't continue, we can't have them fail on us, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's any more discussion on this, fine, but otherwise, is there someone that, otherwise I'm happy to move this if you'd like to go it this way. So motion made by Leslie Tarkington.
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
I'll second to discuss.
Sorry, Andy?
I'll second the motion so you could ask so we discuss this.
The from account is from salaries. We have 18,000 excess in salaries.
We have the internal auditor 100,000 plus that we're not spending.
Except that we're using her funds to fund the Bloom Shapiro consulting funds in a different 100 line.
That was last year.
So we funded Bloom Shapiro in this year's budget, and we funded the salary in this year's budget?
No. We funded for $100,000 in 2019, 2020, and it got delayed. The money was encumbered. We didn't start, so you've got all of that money is already paid for from last year's savings, not the current year. And then this year, if you want to do another tranche of 4 or 5 audits, it would come from a combination of savings for this year, but they're going to run into next year. So it would be split between the 2 years. So you've got the savings that are completely intact for the current year.
We should probably get that more on a fiscal year basis. Maybe if we do it and work with Bloom Shapiro just for asking them to do some additional audits, perhaps we can get the billing or the contract to be on a fiscal year basis, some 2 for this year and 3 for next year, whatever it is. So our budgeting cycles in sync with that contract. It just might make it easier. But yeah, so I understand that why we have the funds this year. It clearly, as you point out, though, if we end up going into an agreement, letter agreement with Bloom Shapiro to do 5 more audits, that does put a little pressure on the 100 account.
A lot of money.
The 18,000 is, you're right, it's not a lot of money. It works out to about 1,500 per iPad, and I guess that's what we're budgeting here. But okay, so we can continue.
Any more questions or comments?
Just one more question. On some respects, the iPad is not sufficient for one's needs if you're going to be working with a lot of spreadsheets, particularly for the budget committee. Is there any thought of having a higher grade unit for us?
Personally, I don't want to carry around 2 computers. So that I don't. As it is, I've got my town iPad and my personal computer, and I get why we maybe shouldn't be necessarily doing all this work on our own personal equipment. But I'm not sure I can totally separate business and personal, that I have 2 devices.
So real quick, because I think
I'm with Leslie on that particular response. I like the smaller size. I like the flexibility, and it has a good camera. So it works well for all of this Zooming.
And most of us have PCs at home, which we can do the more complicated work. I think the portability of the iPad is very attractive. I use it for that. I carry it routinely for that purpose and go back to the PC time to time when the iPad can't handle a project. So I support this item, and we can appropriate the 18,000 if we don't use all of the 18,000, so it lasts at the end. There's no harm in that. And maybe we should be thinking in terms of having some process of going through a 2-year cycle and replacing them more routinely. I don't know, but that's something we can look at later on.
So are we ready to bring this to a vote, or we have any further comments from Roland or Pete?
Seconded by Andy. I'm ready to vote.
I'm sorry?
Yes, it's been moved by Andy.
I think I moved it and Andy seconded it, to be honest with you.
I meant to
So,
say.
and Jeff is a yes, I'm a yes.
Yes.
And Leslie, are you a yes or no?
I don't think we need it, but so I'm, as much as I don't like to abstain because I think we should have opinions, I will defer to my colleagues and abstain.
Okay, so 3-0-1. So Leslie Moriarty voted abstain, and the rest of us voted affirmative. So Mike, it's up to you. Okay, so
I get mine before Jeff does.
Oh no.
I think we should be concerned about, the cyber and all that in today's environment. So I use whoever's judgment, Tom Klein's and whatever, in terms of what we need to do to go forward. And yours, Mike.
But just to comment on that, Leslie, I mean, that's software, not hardware. So we just need to be clear, the iPads that we have from a hardware basis are capable of doing and covering those needs. It's just a matter of whether the equipment wears out. Jeff has used his too much.
Or wrong.
All right.
Okay, so GEMS, release of conditions for $2,350,000, and who do we have here from GEMS?
There was a GEMS. There's a GEMS EMS.
Can you raise your hand if you're here for GEMS? Oh, there we go. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. It's Tracy Sheetinger and Tom Miserandino.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I'm going to promote you to panelist.
Tracy and Tom, welcome to the Budget Committee meeting, the December Budget Committee meeting. Would you like to? Now we can see you. Thank you. So would you like to bring us up to date in terms of this release of conditions? And your, briefly on your performance or any issues related to the COVID, and also some of the successful outside funding you've also received because of the COVID. So you want to just give us an update, please?
Sure. You want to start with finance or operations first?
Whatever you like.
Whichever you prefer.
There we go. All
We'll
right,
do
so
finance.
I'll start. So this is, you have, I think, the quarterly review packet that was distributed. So this is through year-to-date results through October of 2020. So overall, we've had a positive 260,000 change in net assets. Year-to-date revenue is 3.67 million, which is 2% below budget. The big story here is our patient revenue, which is down year to date, down 12%, which is $147,000. The month of October alone, revenue was down 123,000 versus prior year. That was our single largest, lowest month since COVID began. And it's driven by our call volume as well, being down year over year, 396 versus 301, which is a 24% reduction in calls. So what this proves is it's just very unpredictable, COVID. We've seen months where, when it first started, we had a severe decrease in calls, and then it kind of notched up. And we thought we were headed in the right way. And then again, October comes and it was our worst month since the pandemic began. So it's just a very highly volatile, unpredictable environment we're operating in. And it's that all comes through in the patient revenue line. Also in the revenue side, our standby revenue is down significantly, as you could expect, with the reduction of town events and other kind of events where our standby services are required. On the expense side, we are about 9% below budget. This is driven primarily by, on the salary line, our per diem EMT and medic line. If you look at our paramedic and EMT line, you'll see that's well below. There's been a decreased need for per diem work as our full-time medics have been able to staff. We're also down on overtime, and that's about 10% below. Much like on the revenue side, we're below on the standby salary line. Since standby revenue is down, there's no standby salaries being paid. And then in addition to that, vehicle maintenance is down, bad debt is down again because call volume's down, therefore our receivables are down. And then our fundraising expenses are down since most of our events are like this, virtual, not live events.
Thank you. So do you want to also just, if you can help us, when you go back to your balance sheet, footnote number 3, you have in May, GEMS applied for and received a payroll protection plan, PPP loan in the amount of $990,000.
Yeah, so that's right. So we did apply, we did receive, it was $989,537 we received. In the last week of September, I applied for loan forgiveness, and in the end of November, we actually did end up hearing from the Small Business Administration, and our loan was forgiven in full.
So have you booked that as a revenue at this point? The figures that you've given us, it does not recognize that nearly $1 million worth of revenue.
That's correct, because as of April 30th, it was still a kind of a conditional loan, if you will.
So as you come up to the year end, by that time, as you report back to us, you will have shown that, again, nearly $1 million worth of revenue.
That's correct. It'll be on the
which could produce some positive on the balance sheet that maybe we can adjust for to some benefit to the town as we fund you for the upcoming year.
Perhaps.
So I think those are good points, Jeff, and I had some similar questions or whatever. I would, just like to point out though, this is the advantage of neighborhood walks, because I bumped into Harry Aurora walking around the neighborhood about this time and mentioned I'd heard the GEM story at the RTM committee meeting, and we talked about it, and I think they applied, they did not know they would be eligible. They applied the following Tuesday, and I think by Thursday, they learned that they were successful. So question for you, Tom, do you think there are other similar programs you can continue to apply for, or will there be, and will you be applying?
Well, I'm not aware of any right now that are out there. If there are, or new ones do become available, we most certainly will apply if we are eligible, or if we believe we meet the eligibility requirements. I can say in our results in that other income line, we did receive a grant from the Health and Human Services Department.
Through the CARES Act.
Yeah, through the CARES Act, and that was about $30,000. And then we applied for a grant through another local nonprofit and received about just under $20,000 for that. It was the Inner City Fund out of Bridgeport to help, and both of those were to help specifically with COVID-related expenses. So as we do see these, we do apply as long as we know we'll meet the eligibility requirements.
That's great. So, we appreciate all your work and operating in this much more difficult environment and with its various and sundry risks. Do we have some questions here? Yeah, Tracy, we haven't gotten to you yet.
I'll just give you a quick update operationally on COVID. Obviously, the peak was this spring. April was our highest month. 38% of our transports were all COVID positive. As Tom was saying, it kind of normalized over the summer. And as we all know, we started to see an increase really in October. 2.3% of our patients in October were COVID positive. And then we had November, where we jumped up to 12%. So that's a huge jump in 1 month. Can't really tie that to any real driver. December to date, we're trending pretty much the same, 13%. So I can say that we really haven't seen any real spikes as a result of the Thanksgiving holiday, which is good news. People were doing what they were asked to do by, staying home, not necessarily visiting family. Our supply issues with our PPP is under control for the time being. We have about 6 months supply on hand, which is great. We still are keeping our volunteers who ride typically as thirds with us off of our roster, because we don't want to continually utilize all of our PPP for a third party on a call. And obviously there's the vaccine. We are working closely with the state and Yale New Haven Health Systems. EMS is in the very first group 1A of the distribution. We don't have a date, but we have submitted all of our information, and we are hopeful to be starting to receive the vaccine for those who want it within the next week.
Wow, that's great news.
That is very good news. We're very happy about that. A lot of times, you guys like to hear this stat. For our last quarter, our cardiac arrest return of spontaneous circulation, so where we got pulses back on patients, was 33%. Remember, the national average, I can't tell you what it is today, but it ranges between 8 and 12%. So we were at 33% last quarter. My assumption is it's up a little bit higher as we've had some positive outcomes just this past couple of weeks. So that's really good news for some of the citizens of Greenwich.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And then the last thing is if you've seen us around, we will be out there in an ambulance that's lit up with Santa Claus driving around the back. It is a very small fundraiser. We're just trying to bring some holiday cheer in these crazy times, not only for our staff, but for everyone around town.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
So do we have any questions?
Yeah,
Andy,
I have a quick
Andy Deuce?
couple comments. Tracy, thank you for your service here. I hope everyone's stayed safe among your staff and volunteers this past period.
Yes.
And I hope you get the vaccine soon. Tomorrow will be too soon, not too soon.
Right. Thank you.
A question for Tom. I didn't see a balance sheet or a statement of financial position here in the material circulated to the committee. Did I miss it or?
No, I don't think historically we've given a balance sheet.
Okay. Okay. Well, the reason I ask is when would you be able to book the forgiveness of the loan from the feds?
So it was forgiven in November, so I recorded it in November.
Okay. Okay. And I guess the income statement only goes through the end of October. That's why we didn't see it here.
That's right.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
I will also add, I saw elsewhere in the package, I mean, it was last night, an explanation for any of your response times that were below standard. I thought it's pretty pleased to see that. And I wish others would follow your example. But thank you again. Thank you for making it such a thorough presentation for us. I appreciate it.
I say this often, but I'm going to say it again, just because I have a very high regard for the quality of the service that we get from GEMS. At a time when most communities, ambulance service is still a snatch and run, where an ambulance comes and transports the person to the hospital and he arrives, 30 minutes later, whatever it is, in whatever was the condition, he was loaded into the back. The advanced life support that they're doing with interventions, the intubating people, the beginning pharmaceuticals, the electronics, or putting the patient in conjunction, in communication with the doctor inside the emergency room from the moment this person is loaded into the box. It's extraordinarily high level of care, which produces these extraordinary results, such as Tracy was just describing with cardiac arrest figures and things. We're very lucky in this community to have a very high standard of care. And I don't think most people in the community realize how different it is from what they'd be experiencing in most other communities. And I say kudos to these people for running the program that they run. It is unusual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leslie, do you have something to say?
I just wanted to comment on the financial performance, which really builds on Jeff's last comment. And as far as an organization, you had to pivot pretty quickly to address the financial concerns you had as your business model kind of changed, really. And once again, you showed us, like you've done over the past few years, of being very fiscally prudent. You are very quick to respond, quick to act. You reduced your expenses in area, and some of those decisions aren't easy to make. So it's noticeable and appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question for you all, and it's not meant to be controversial or negative, but we're being asked to release a condition of $2,350,000 today. And, we see that because of the environment, at least in this first period you're showing us, the quarter, that, your results were positive. We also, know that you haven't booked this, PPP forgiveness loan as revenue yet, and you have some other funds here. Question, I expect that you will be back. I know you will be back in February for your budget, okay? And so the question for you is, we want to fund everything that you need. There's no question about this. But what's different from GEMS, from say town departments, is the 501c3. So at the end of the year, if departments haven't spent their full budget, then the money is returned to the town. What's different with a 501c3 is it doesn't. It remains within that organization. And Jeff has talked about this year versus next year. But we're still, trying to balance out this year, and we have so many unknowns too with our departments going up and down. The question is, do you, given your projections, and we want to make sure you have everything you need this full amount of 2,350,000, or is there a possibility that maybe you'll only need 90% of it, or 2 million? And I know that I'm putting you on the spot, but can you think through this, or give us any kind of comment on this? I mean, where do you think you're going to end up in the year? And is there any way of you helping the town? And we're going to be back in February helping you. I mean, there's no question about that. Just, it's communications.
Sure. This is a conversation that Tom and I have had because, this pandemic has made it difficult for everyone to try and navigate. When we were going through the budget process, when we're doing everything, and Tom can speak to this as well, month to month and looking forward, the spring, we were scrambling, and thankfully you pointed us in a direction that can help us. Our concern, and correct me if I'm wrong if you think different, we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So when Tom was talking about call volume, we had a very consistent, stable model in this town for years, roughly 6,000, 6,500 calls consistently over the past 5 years, not an issue. And then a pandemic hits and we're doing half of that 1 month, 3/4 of it the next month, then we're back up to budget. And then in October, we're well below. And then November, there is no consistency here. So my concern is we don't know when the end is going to be. Hopefully that this vaccine will actually do what they're telling us it's going to do. And within 12 months, we will be back to normal. The problem is people's appetite for activating 911 because they're afraid of going to the doctor. They're afraid of going to the emergency room. They're afraid, in fact, to get into an ambulance. People just want to stay home, regardless of the fact that they know they have a fractured hip or are having a heart attack. We've seen this firsthand. With those types of things and the inconsistencies in our own revenue generating, to say that we could hand this back today and reduce a number and give you 10%, 50%, we would. I know that I don't feel comfortable because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And I don't want to have to come back for an interim appropriation and say,
I think that's the case, Rick.
We guessed wrong, and here we are.
And I think that's it exactly. We'd be guessing, right? Tracy, nor I, nor anyone on this call could tell us, predict with any certainty how this is going to play out. So in order to, it would be not prudent to kind of reduce that number and then have to, again, come back to you should we have guessed wrong, if you will.
So
again, Jeff, I'm just going to continue and then I'll call on you.
Thank you.
I was thinking more of, say, not necessarily, coming back for the whole appropriation process, but maybe, pick some number that you would feel comfortable with, 90% or just 350,000, whatever it happens to be. Just release all but that final amount with the idea that you're going to come back in February and that we could release it in February if, things were looking different. But, again, I leave that up to you. And quite frankly, we haven't talked about this before. And I will give my own opinion here. My opinion would be to release it all today, but to have you go back, to recommend to the full BET, but to have you go back and look at this more seriously, and by Thursday, tight time frame because our BET meeting is on Thursday, just see, whether you need 100% of it released, because we can always, assuming that others on the other BET members think similarly, or, again, I'm fully prepared to release it all today, but what I'm trying to do is other ways we can work together when there's so many other areas that have unknowns too. So that I'm just raising this.
So I have a thought that maybe is slightly similar. I mean, generally speaking, we've funded your operating costs. You've on some years, you contributed your own operating costs and had losses, had expenses above what we fund. But generally speaking, we've funded your operating costs, and generally speaking, you funded capital, you've done capital drives, and from it, you've replaced your vehicles and made other capital improvements. So my own inclination, I'm speaking just for myself, but it's a similar line of thought with Mrs. Tarkington, would be to recommend to the full BET at this point that they approve the full release to you of the second half, but to renew this conversation with you as we go forward into the new year, hoping that you please not have taken the benefit of the $990,000 of care funds and used it for some capital appropriation that normally wouldn't have been handed out of current funds. And we'll review with you in the spring what your current situation is. And it may be that you have some funds on hand courtesy of these care funds that could be used to offset, slightly reduce, that means the amount of operating funding that you need for the upcoming year, in a conversation we're having with you next February. That's not quite exactly what Mrs. Tarkington was saying. I was giving you a little more time to experience life under COVID and to do your own thinking. But it's not very dissimilar from what Mrs. Tarkington was suggesting to you.
Yeah.
So we'll see for sure in February. That's our normal oh, well, I say that, but we're counting on things moving ahead in a positive direction. So Leslie, do you have more?
Yeah. You introduced a topic I hadn't really thought about before. If you look at their 6 months ended, they're 280,000 positive. And I don't know if we looked at last year's and the year before, whether we.
264 wasn't, I thought was the number, but.
Sorry.
260, yeah.
My iPad is far enough away that even these reading glasses don't help.
Maybe you need an iPad.
But so the question is just as far as process wise, so that Tracy doesn't get overly concerned, if we did only release a part of the money, and I don't know how I think about that yet, but it would only require BET approval. It's not an RTM approval. You don't have to have an interim, because what would happen is we would still have the appropriation on the books. It's just the BET hasn't released it to GEMS for its use. And if it stays like that, then it does revert to the town's fund balance if it's not needed for the year. So the question is, how do we as a BET want to appropriate it? I certainly don't want to give the wrong message to GEMS, but there's certainly a lot of uncertainty. So maybe it makes sense to take a look at where their financial position was in prior years to see whether this year they're ahead of the game or not. I don't really have a sense of that.
So Tom, I see your hand up.
So can I ask a clarifying question? When everyone says year, when you say year, you're referring to the year ended June 30th or the year ending April 30th?
No, our year ends June 30th.
Okay. So, and now you're all well aware our year ends April 30th. So that was my confusion. And now if I could just address your point, at this point last year, we were a positive 356.
The year-to-year comparison is useful in a COVID circumstance, and we have a difficult period of COVID still to come before enough of the population has been inoculated for this to become a non-COVID year. I'm uncomfortable about year-to-year comparisons in this particular year. I don't mind the idea of our releasing, which I think is what Mrs. Moriarty was referring to, actually probably was also what Mrs. Tarkington was referring to, release a healthy chunk of the second half, but not all, and have you come back to us perhaps at about the point of the end of your fiscal year, at the end of April, for a release of funding in time for May and June or something. I mean, I'm not against that. I just don't want to leave you feeling hamstrung or apprehensive about it, but I'm seeing that people on my board with me who I have huge respect for, two of them, maybe even three, but two of them anyway. I mean, I have respect for all the other three. I just haven't heard from the third one yet. Maybe that's the greater wisdom. There's not much harm in that. Again, as Mrs. Moriarty pointed out to you, it doesn't have to go through the RTM. You just have to come back to the BET we meet once a month. That's not so difficult for you to do.
And Jeff, I wasn't even thinking as far along as May. I was thinking more, I keep saying February. You know, we expect that GEMS is going to be back in February for the budget hearings for fiscal 22. We have our, as I remember, but I haven't pulled up my calendar, our meeting in February is fairly late, as is the BETs. So even if we discuss, you know, the whole rest of it or whatever, 100% in that meeting, we would be able to continue, release the rest of the funds. You know, we'll call it in February, towards the end of February. Can I just ask Roland a question? Roland, how do we release the funds? So would normally these funds be released to them, you know, we'll say this Friday after the BET meeting, or would it normally be released January 1? Is all of it released, or do you release by quarters? Could you just explain, please?
It's normally released as soon as the BET approves it.
So Friday or Monday or something like that.
We don't receive it until January.
Yeah, we
2nd.
receive it January 2nd.
Okay, so January 2nd. So we do it the first of the year.
Mhm.
Okay, so where do we go from here, guys?
Well, I have a question before.
Yes, Andy.
The differences in the fiscal year. What was the genesis for that? And Tracy, you probably know better than Tom.
This ties into EMS statewide, and it has to do with, it actually escapes me now, what the driving factor is. I know I've explained this to you. Do you remember?
I don't, I'm sorry.
But it is, I wish now I can remember. I know some of it is EMS driven and some of it is our auditors driven because of the timing of the year and the expense.
I could speak to that. We get a much lower rate for having an off calendar year fiscal on our annual audit. So we save a significant sum by doing that.
Okay.
So I'll tell you, to put a fine point on this, let me try out a motion, see how my colleagues react to it. I'm going to propose that we release $1,350,000 of the $2,350,000, leaving the condition repose on the remaining $1 million. That then means that $1,350,000 becomes available to them on the 7th of January, or whatever date it was that was just mentioned that it's released. And GEMS is free to come back to us at any point for release of a portion or all of the remaining $1 million, making a showing at that point of what they need and why. The appropriation is out there, it just still remains conditioned. I'm completely open to different numbers. I just picked a number arbitrarily.
Feels kind of low. The only number I'm thinking that may tie to is the 990,000 of loan that they will have forgiven.
They already have it, and they're running, ignoring that, they're running $264,000 ahead of budget. So I thought that left them room to be able, but listen, I'm open to a different number. You think I'm being too chintzy? I welcome a different
but
number.
I have no basis to know the right number either. And I'm looking at Tom and Tracy, and you don't know the right number either, but you understand that the direction we're going in. It's really not to cause you to take operational actions for the lack of funding.
I totally understand what the committee's trying to accomplish. And I had that question before. I feel better now having the understanding that you meet monthly. And if you did not decide to release all of these funds, that we have that opportunity to come back and say, at this moment, we need X, okay? It could be once a month if things fell apart. I don't know that I anticipate that, but at least I have a comfort factor.
Okay.
I didn't understand how that was going to work before.
Jeff, was your motion an amendment, or was that a new motion? I thought we had a motion on the table before you made that motion.
There's no motion yet. We have an item before us that hasn't been moved yet. And so the item before us is to release $2,350,000. And I was going to make a motion to release, but not all of it. Guided by the wisdom of my colleagues, I would make the motion instead perhaps to release $1.5 million. That would leave 850 still conditioned and available to GEMS, but they'd have to come back and ask for release of the condition. And I'm still open to other numbers.
Has that been seconded yet?
Nothing has been seconded.
I'll second it. We can
So the motion is to release at this point in time
$1.5 million.
$1.5 million, moved by Jeff Raymer, seconded by Leslie Moriarty. Now, again, I just want to repeat that while you can come back any month, including January, we expect that we're going to be seeing you in February. So at least we can get a good update at that point in time. If needed, we can release some part of the additional, or we can release all of the additional, whatever you're the most comfortable with. But, you know, this should be a communications, because we're very proud of GEMS and everything they do. And also we respect all of the stress and hard work you're doing in today's COVID environment. So this is not meant to add any stress to you. This is simply a release of money that comes within a week or two.
If I can add, Jeff, thank you for making that motion. If we put it to a vote, I will not support it. My bias is to make the full allocation here. To paraphrase one of our DET colleagues, this is a gem in the crown of Greenwich. I think we're just playing with small numbers. These guys are on the front lines. They haven't even received the vaccines yet. Don't know when they will. They're day and night. And I think, come on, guys, let's go ahead and complete the release of the full 2.35 million. And you know, they're not going to go away at the end of the fiscal year, and we'll have plenty of chances to even things out if by chance they are able to make a lot of savings on that amount.
I appreciate Andy's sentiment. I'm still going to stay, I think, with my motion. I just feel more embarrassed about it now. So.
I think that you know, to Andy's point, I think that we all agree, and you know, I worry a little bit that this would imply that we're not 100% in support of GEMS, which I think we all really are. And but you know, what I raised was the point that unlike the other town departments, at fiscal year end, this money doesn't revert to the fund balance if it's not all spent. So anyway, so do we have a vote on Jeff's motion?
Yeah, you have
So
a motion,
Jeff,
but no
is
vote.
the motion still at $1.5 million, or?
Yeah, my motion is 5, seconded by Mrs. Moriarty.
And you're all happy at $1.5 million? Jeff, what is your amount? I mean, your vote. Sorry about this.
I'm voting yay on that motion.
Leslie?
I'll vote yes.
Question for you, Leslie Tarkington. If the vote's a 2-2 vote, what happens? It goes to the BET as is, or can we rescind the motion?
All events goes to the BET as it is. Our actions are advisory. So what happens, it gets reported to the BET that before them is an item for release of condition at $2,350,000. There had been a motion at the budget committee to release just $1.5 million, and that vote hypothetically received the vote in your hypothetical 2-2, and therefore didn't pass.
Thank you.
There is the opportunity for someone else to make another motion at another dollar amount.
Thank you, Leslie.
Right now, even, right now.
Well, to amend the motion.
To amend the motion or to,
well, you've started the vote, taking the vote
Yeah,
tally.
so let's finish the vote. So I'll vote no, recognizing, of course, I may come back with a new motion afterwards.
Leslie Tarkington, how are you?
So, you know, quite frankly, I'm a little bit mixed now because this number is a bit lower than I was thinking of before, when I was even thinking, you know, say 90%. So I think what I will do is I will say,
you should know that
if I abstain, then this passes, which I'm not sure in this particular case I want to do. But I think I might be interested in coming in with a higher number.
Can I ask a question? Mr. Raymer, given the comments from both Andy and Leslie, do you want to withdraw the motion and so we can at least entertain a different number as well?
I'm complete. For the purpose of allowing discussion, I'll certainly withdraw the motion because I remain open to other numbers. I don't mean to be arbitrary. Is there any? You had wanted to release the full million, the full 2,350,000.
Yes.
Is that a completed thought, or is there a number that if my $1.5 million were higher, you would have been induced to support the motion?
That's the number I would support, the 2.35. And look, if there's a balance left over at the end of the year, it'll take care of itself ultimately. I'm not worried about that.
Okay, can I ask Leslie that same question, Jeff? What number would you consider?
So, my number was, I wanted to have this thought across here. And so my number was, as I think I said before, I said two numbers, 90% or 350. I think 18 million or something, just above it. What?
1.8.
Oh, 1.8 million. I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry. Too many things.
Your enthusiasm.
So 1.8 million, 1,350,000. I think the message is here that we all want to work together. And I think it isn't a severe message, but it also gives them much more flexibility. I don't want any more pressure on an organization that is working so hard. Jeff, I see your hand up.
So I'm getting chintzier by the. Here's my concern about that. If we release holding back less than the 990, it has the implication that of the 990 they receive, the smaller piece is the piece that we think should have been shared with the town. The rest of it, they should be spending as they like. And I'm not sure that's where I'm at. If they receive largesse from the federal government for 990, which is offsetting their operating expenses, I have kind of a feeling that maybe there should have been an offset of the operating expenses. We're paying the operating expenses. If the inclination is to hold back less than 990, I then flip and go to the same place where Andy is and say, now I'd like to release the whole 2,350,000, and we'll fess up with you people in the new budget year for what happened to the 990. I don't want to say you keep half, I take half, because I think the town should have gotten recognition for more than a half or something. So I'm now in Andy's camp. I think I'd like to release the full 2,350,000, but be cautioning GEMS that we're going to have a conversation with them on the new budget year for how to apply that 990 that they received during the year that should have been now applied going forward. This has gotten complicated.
Leslie, do you have any more comments here?
I'm more flexible than Jeff is on this point. So, I mean, I'd release 2 million. I'd release the 1.8 million. I don't think I don't want to send the message that we're not supportive, but I do think they probably will not spend up to the level they anticipated last year.
So there's presently no motion before us because the motion was withdrawn. I'm now going to make a motion. I don't know if I have a second to approve this item and recommend it to the full BET. That this item is 2,350,000.
I second that.
Can we add to that and that there be further discussion on this topic of the full BET, or you think that's stepping beyond our?
They've got that message loud and clear.
Okay. Okay. So Leslie, you.
Mike's hand is up and down, kind of in the.
I don't see Mike's hand.
Oh, it's down again. Sorry.
There it is again. Mike, would you like to have something to say?
Real quick on this, I think what you're intending to do is something what you're not doing. The subject to release approved by us, recommended by us, approved by the RTM is a subject to release for a report for $2.35 million. Not 1.8, not 1.5. if what you're saying is you suspect that GEMS may come out financially ahead due to COVID, grants, reimbursements, whatever.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the December 10th, 2020 Board of Selectmen meeting virtually. As always, we will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen minutes for the regular meeting of November 12th, 2020?
Lauren Rabin, I motion that we approve the minutes from our Board of Selectmen regular meeting held on November 12th, 2020.
When you're talking about your budget for next year.
That's kind of the motion that's before us.
Okay, so the motion was made by Jeff and it was seconded by Andy. So Jeff, you are a,
Pardon?
Jeff, we're voting.
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Yes. Andy,
Yes.
Leslie,
I'll vote yes.
Mrs. Darkington?
I know, I'm just writing this down so I don't forget it, to be honest. We've had so many different conversations here. I apologize. So I'm very mixed on this because I was the one who brought up the topic. And, but, you know, I guess we've got more than one of these coming up afterwards. And so maybe, you know, that now sets a precedent. So I understand what Mike's saying, but our whole objective always has been to support. So I will vote yes at this point in time, and I thank Tracy and Tom for this very lengthy conversation and the time they've been very patient with us. But I think also that it does bring up a topic that for sure will be on the list of questions for you come February.
Thank you very much, guys.
And so we appreciate everything that you've done, and you're being very patient, and we thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
And so that vote was 4-0-0 on the release of conditions, and we're recommending the release. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So now we have human services. And I saw before that Demetria Nelson was here. So if Jenny, if you could please bring up Demetria. And
Okay, could you please unmute yourself and say
I don't
hi?
see it.
Yes,
Hello, Jen, can you hear me?
Yep, let me move you up. And who else?
Demetria, do you have anyone else with you? Or if there's anyone else with you, would they please raise their hand? Do you have anyone else with you, Demetria? You're on mute. You are on mute.
Yes, sorry.
There you
No,
are.
hi. No, I don't have anyone else with me.
Okay, and so you're here on a very positive thing.
Yes, so the Department of Human Services applied for a Cdbg CV grant in June, and we were awarded $50,000. We are now requesting to be able to utilize those funds for reimbursement of rental assistance provided to those Greenwich residents in need. Currently on the line item that we have for rental assistance, as of yesterday, we had $37,000 that is allocated for that line, and we have already dispensed $34,473. And we expect once the evictions moratorium has ended, which is scheduled to end by the end of this year, December 31st, we'll have a significant increase in requests for assistance for rental assistance funds.
I'm looking for the sheet.
And I know that Tyler explained earlier, and Leslie, also you did, that this $50,000 was the $50,000 that was awarded in June. And I will be coming back later this fiscal year for the additional funds that were awarded to the Department of Human Services.
The 25,000.
Yes, 25,000 for rental assistance, 25,000 for emergency necessities, and 7,720 for technological enhancements.
Jeff?
I didn't follow, Dimitri, I'm sorry. The 34,000 expended, is that 34,000 out of this 50, or you spent 34,000 out of existing funds, this 50 then replenishes? You're going to need that replenishment coming up, and you'll need the other 25 as well because of the mess you expect to have come after the first of the year. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, no, I was just explaining what we've spent related to the amount that is allocated for that line. That does not include the 50,000. So the 37,000 that we currently have on budget, we have spent 34,000 of that, and we expect the rate of requests to increase.
And none of that 34 and 37,000, none of that's out of this 50. This 50 starts a new fund.
A new fund.
I got you. I'm sorry, a little
Yes.
slow, but I got it now.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on this?
Yeah, Andy, yes, Dimitri, hi. Thank you for
Hi,
all the
Andy.
work you do. What's the criteria the department has for giving this rental assistance?
In general, for individuals that receive financial assistance from us, the asset requirement is having no more than $3,000 in, $3,000 in assets, and the income limit is 300% of the poverty line. And just to give you an idea of what that number is, for a family of four, 300% of the poverty line is $78,000 a year.
And this is for Greenwich residents renting here in town or renting it outside of town. Is that also
renting here in town?
In town.
Mm-hmm.
And you suggested this is just a tip of the iceberg. There's a much more demand than what this 50,000 would address going forward.
Yes, it is. And that's why we did go back to, and we're so pleased that CDBG had additional funds so that we could apply for additional money.
Thank you. Leslie, do you have any questions?
I do. So besides that 50, you'll get another 25,000. So you have 75,000 more to add to your resources. The 25,000 for client necessities, that's not a budget category that we have for you. What is that? Could that also be rent if necessary, or is that allocated elsewhere?
If absolutely necessary, we could, because it is related to COVID-19, but really what we're requesting the emergency necessities for would be, there's some clients that have communicated difficulty in securing PPE, especially now that our very vulnerable clients are able to go out to the doctor's office. Do they have the appropriate 3-ply mask? Do they have hand sanitizer that they can take with them? If they have a homemaker coming into their home, do they have bleach? Do they have the detergent that they need? So that's where the emergency necessities are going to focus in on that, because there's these high demand products that our clients may have difficulty securing.
I see. Okay, well, I'm glad that you have access to some additional resources here quickly, and clearly I'm supportive of giving you the access to use the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a motion, Leslie?
I'll make the motion to approve the use.
And I'll gladly second it.
Okay, so those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 400. Demetria, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And we know we're going to see you again, because you're going to be back on the other $57,000 plus. So that's great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time. Take care.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy holidays.
Bye. Happy holidays. Bye.
Happy holidays.
So
Happy holidays.
now we have Nathaniel Witherall on our list. We certainly have a big day today. And I saw Larry Simon here before. So Jenny, we need to bring up Larry Simon.
Okay, Larry, can you unmute yourself, please? There we go.
And then
Say
Larry, do you have anyone else that you want to bring up? They should raise their hand. I don't see anyone else, but maybe you do.
Can you see me?
No.
No, we can hear you
I'm
though.
moving up. He's on his way.
It's like Star Trek. Beam him up.
That's right.
Am I supposed to do that? There we go.
Start your video. There you go.
Okay, great, Larry. Do you want to give us an overview? And thank you for getting your memo in. Appreciate it.
Well, I sent you my report. I like to use Peter Minarski's favorite line. You have my report. Do you have any questions?
So why don't you give us a very brief overview summarizing your critical points of your memo for the public. We have a release of conditions, the contribution from the general fund of $1.5 million for Nathaniel Woodwell.
So the first section deals with where we are in terms of assembling our management team. As I wrote, we have hired an executive director in April, which would provided a nice transition from the end of HGG. We hired a CFO in July, having had the position vacant for essentially 7 months. And we hired a director of nursing in August, having that position vacant for also around 7 or 8 months. And I think finally we have a pretty hardworking management team moving forward and helping us make significant improvements. And lastly, as you may or may not remember, you funded money. When you funded the money for HGG, you gave us money for PKF O'Connor Davies. We've used them to reconcile the matrix and the Munis system. And they've been helping us with month-end closing, excuse me, month-end closing procedures, and helping us with reconciliations between matrix and Munis. That's been very helpful. That was the child. I'll just stop here briefly on the management. All right.
You want to just give us any brief update on financial operations since this is, additional funds?
That's the second section.
Oh.
So now I have sent to everybody a copy of our October closing statement. I've been asked to send this to the BET every month, and I'll just go through a few highlights. The census remains quite challenging. And, when I was listening to the discussion with Gems, it's not hard to see why. People, one, don't want to go to hospitals. Two, they don't want to go to nursing homes. And our census has been in the 150s. It was 160, 150. It's now in the high 140s. And until people are willing to go back into hospital facilities and nursing homes, it will probably stay there. We have a lot of admissions, and we have a lot of people being discharged. We're getting a lot of short-term medical patients, but we have today 8 people in the hospital and 147 in-house. So that's proving to be challenging. And that obviously has had a negative impact on our revenue. So we had budgeted 188 beds, we're running closer to 150 beds. Offsetting that, however, is that Medicaid is paying us more money. They gave us a 10% premium, which is the equivalent of like 12 more people in-house. And Medicare, and anybody that had COVID is able to be billed as Medicare. So that's helped also. But from a revenue point of view, we are down, I think, for the first 4 months, close to $1 million in expected revenue. and that will, and it will be continuing to be a challenging year until people get vaccinated. On a more positive note, our staff is scheduled to be vaccinated on December 26th. That's when all the staff at Witherall and the patients will be vaccinated the first time, and I believe the second time in the middle of January. So that's very good. With regard to, and if you have the financial report readily available, as you can see on the bottom of page 3, we've been the recipient of almost $2 million in grants, which we have not included yet in our revenue, but will eventually bring into our revenue this year. Some of it is from the state for COVID expenses. Some of it is from the federal government for revenue shortfalls. One of the criteria to keep the money from the federal government is that your census is less this year by more than the amount of the grant. Say it again. Our census in 2020 is more than $2 million, $1.8 million less than it is in 2019, which is greater than the amount of the grant given to us, and therefore we're able to keep the grant money. That was one of the criteria. They're just paying you for the lack of occupancy. I could just stop if people have questions. I'll just keep going.
I think that's a good overview, Larry. And so let's see thank you very much. So let's see if we have some questions. Do you have any questions?
I was going to go to expenses.
Oh, please go to expenses. I thought you're finished.
No. Our expenses are more than $1 million below budget, $1.4 million below budget for the first 4 months. And this is, I think, part of what I wrote up in the report. The management team is really focused on reducing expenses, reducing overtime. We looked at every vendor we have, and I say this, and I put this in the report for a couple of reasons. I think what we did at Witherall is something all departments in town can do, because over time you just accrete a lot of vendors that you don't remember that you have, expenses you're not aware of, or maybe it's just us and we're totally oblivious to a lot of things. But we got rid of some vendors. We looked at all of our expenses. We saw why we were incurring them, and we changed some of our practices on how to get rid of those. That has helped us reduce our costs. And then we're clearly looking at our major vendor contracts to see if we can improve pricing, or mostly pricing. And that's what we'll be doing over the next few months. But in general, we've just kept salaries, overtime down. We've been helped by the labor contract settlements with LIUNA and Teamsters. Teamsters hasn't settled yet, but with LIUNA, they were favorable to what we budgeted, and that's helped us. But in general, I think it's just more careful management of our resources, and I'm pretty proud of everybody on that. We've been able to absorb the increase in healthcare for the moment, and again, we're going to get some relief next year as the copay goes up to 12.5% from 10, and I think then it goes up to 14%. So that's also helpful. And so when you think that our expenses are $1 million below budget, 800,000 below budget, $1 million below budget, our expenses are $1.4 million below budget, we're actually doing better than we expected to do. Plus, we have the $2 million in grants we haven't counted yet. So I think there's a good point to stop and ask if people have questions.
So at the point stopped, all up at the bottom line, you're showing that for the year to date, you're running about $410,000 ahead of budget for the third of a year that we've had. Is there an error that I conclude that if I expand that by 3 and say that you're running about $1.2 million for the whole year, if I project for the whole year, or are there items in that no, you can't expand. I can't project.
I think you can, I'm hoping, well, part of it is that over the next 9 months, we have the labor increases. We have the healthcare increase for one that took effect October 1st. So that will diminish that slightly, maybe by 200,000 over the time period. And we still have to pay, and we're going to pay the retroactive contract increases, but we've encumbered for that. So that actually, I think, will end up having a positive impact on our budget because we over encumbered the money, I think.
So you're thinking that you might end up $1 million, about $1 million ahead of budget for the current year if things did not change dramatically.
And given that, and I think there's a possibility of that, especially if, unless the census sinks. I mean, the census in November and December is lower than it was in the first 4 months. So that's not very positive.
And some of the fright about nursing homes may not wear off right away, although the process of inoculation of the population maybe would begin to undermine that fright, but who knows?
Well, I think, we're going to find out pretty soon, because if the vaccine works and people are coming into nursing homes and they're getting inoculated and it's effective, then I think the fear of coming into nursing homes should be greatly diminished.
Well, we'll see.
Okay. Talk about some of the problem with the census is because the hospital isn't getting admissions. That's not going to come back right away because, presumably all the hospital patients are not getting inoculated.
Well, the hospital has plenty of admissions, just not the ones that come to nursing homes.
Right.
Well, that depends. I think if people feel safe, people have been deferring healthcare, they've been deferring going to hospitals, they've been deferring going to doctors. There's a high chance that we may return to normalcy.
Right.
And as I said before between now and June 30th, we still will find a way to recognize the $2 million in revenue.
I just want to comment on some of the follow-up that you're doing from the recommendations from the study, that the management team is jumping on those recommendations and working through the details, which is very laborious, I know, but it looks like it's yielding some positive changes.
You just find 10,000 here, 20,000 there, 15,000 there. It adds up constantly.
Larry, it's Andy. Is the hospital on the same schedule as Nathaniel for getting the vaccines delivered to the personnel?
I think they're ahead of us.
Okay, that's good. Going back to the schedule that Jeff had referred to, which was the financial results as of October 31st. By the way, as a parenthetical, it might be helpful if Nunzio would number these pages going forward.
Well, that's sorry. Is we put Nunzio on a PIP to see if he can
on a what?
Numbering done. That's an advanced word skill.
Okay. Anyway, I don't see here the COVID grant that you're qualifying for. Is it just too early to book it, or?
Well, they're on the bottom of page 3 of the financials that I sent out. Okay. We're just waiting.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure. We're just waiting. There's no rush to book this at the moment.
Well, when would you be able to? Presumably,
when I'm assured that we are in complete compliance and they're not going to take the money back.
And when would that be?
I'm hoping in the spring.
This fiscal year, certainly. Okay.
This fiscal year for certain.
Yeah, okay.
And we expect to get potentially more money.
I'm sorry. Have we interrupted your presentation because I have a question about capital? Is that premature?
Yeah, slightly, but just
okay. Let's go with the numbers then. I continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was done. I was waiting for other questions, and if there are no other questions, we can go on to capital.
Yeah, question. We're doing question. Yes, you can proceed. Andy?
Yes?
If you have any questions, you can ask the
No,
question.
I'm
And
done
then
operating.
All right, we'll go to capital then.
with capital, any question you have.
So I sent to you a copy of our building committee report. We'll review all of the capital projects that we have open. And I wrote up a few interesting points on the capital. And as you can see, we have two big projects we're working on, one of which is the electrical panels at the basement of the tower, and the other is the CDBG.
Cdbg grant.
Yes, grant.
So I have a question on the electrical the total number is $500,000. I guess of which this consulting service is 15, and the balance is the actual electrical work, or?
Well, it's the equipment.
Okay, and labor. I mean, I have seen the panels a year or two ago. It's pretty daunting, to say the least. And this is something you can't defer, I assume, right?
Well, you know, they were installed in 1974. And I've been advised they could fail at any time. They haven't failed yet. Let's hope they don't fail before we replace them.
And this is on schedule to be done this year?
Well, we're going to go out for bid in January.
Uh-huh.
We're hoping to start in probably March and do the work. As I said, it's best done during the daytime. It's best done during the part of the year when you have more daylight. So if you lose the electricity in part of the area, it's not dark in the building. And as I wrote to you, we have two sub panels in the basement, and we can't figure out where they go. But we have to replace them. And so we're going to use the tried and true method.
Turn it off and see who calls.
Okay, so are there any other questions?
They have an ability, I don't mean to give you mechanical advice. They have an ability to put a signal on a feed line and to track impulse.
I think we're talking about release of conditions, Jeff. So do we have any other questions that would impact the release of conditions here or relate to the release of conditions?
Since we're on the topic, I have a quick question on going back to the panels. Will this work affect the backup facility our town has at Nathaniel for its data storage?
Say the question again.
The town maintains at Nathaniel a backup room, a backup computer for all its services work and data collection. And would that be affected by this electrical panel project?
I hope not, or I hope they've taken that into account.
That's probably the sub panel. They can't figure out where it goes.
Well,
okay, so should we move ahead? Has anyone got their questions answered that are pertinent to the release of conditions?
Yeah, can I make a motion?
You certainly can.
To approve the release of conditions of 1.5 million for Nathaniel Witherell and recommend it to the BET for approval.
Didn't mean to step on.
Second?
Go for it, Jeff.
Seconded.
Okay, so those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it's 4-0-0. Motion passes, so release of conditions goes to the full BET. Larry, on Thursday.
Do I have to be at the BET meeting on Thursday?
No, I propose that we start this as routine.
Mike says no. Okay, so should we move on to?
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for getting the memo done so we could get it out before within the 24 hours. Appreciate that.
The 2 hours spent listening was really worthwhile.
So can we move on, please? Can we please move on to PW3 Public Works? $200,000 release of conditions for the Greenwich Avenue intersection improvement. And for this, we should bring up, let me see who we have here.
Jim Michael.
We need, I'm sorry?
I saw Jim Michael on earlier.
Yeah, yeah, we need to bring up Jim Michael. I saw him. And
Okay.
Jason Kaufman, we can bring him up. Fred Camillo, we can bring him up. And
Okay, so Jim, is that you? Just checking, I'll bring you up.
Hey, Jenny, it's me.
And Jason.
And Jason?
Yep.
Great.
Hello.
And is Fred there? Fred was on the list.
He may have stepped away for a second. I'm asking him to unmute.
Okay. So, Jim, would you like to present this, or is Fred presenting it? Can you just help us and guide us through what this release of conditions is and what you're presenting? And
Fred, is that you?
Yeah, I can't, I don't know if you
I'm
get.
promoting you now.
We can hear you, Fred.
That's okay.
In a moment, you'll be able to be seen as well.
And Fred was going to give the kickoff, and then I was going to fill in as necessary.
Great.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you. Perfect timing in between meetings. Thank you.
Oh, we did it especially for you, Fred.
Good timing. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. This is part of a plan to address a lot of things. It's to enhance public safety on Greenwich Avenue, and it is to beautify the avenue, and it is also to save money in the long run. Going in order there, the public safety aspect, first thing we did was we met with fire, police, DPW, walked the street. We did a demonstration at 6 o'clock in the morning. Everything worked out, trucks turning, emergency vehicles being able to do their jobs. Everything worked out. We also have the strong support of the First Selectmen's Committee on Disabilities. Alan Gunsberg has seen it, and he was not in favor of the original when they first heard that the cops were coming off, and that he's totally in favor of this now. We also have, just so you know, on the side there's more cops on the avenue now than there ever was before. But so the public safety, the sight lines are improved. The bump outs really do a great job of that. But it's also, when you're walking down there, you're going to see a very different Greenwich Avenue. You're not going to see an asphalt boulevard anymore. You're going to start to see greenery 12 months a year. You're going to start to see some color with lots of perennials there. We're even addressing the bicycle craze, which with some bike racks there. So we really think that this is really a critical component of beautifying the avenue, making it more pedestrian friendly, and it fits in line with what we've been doing, the past 12 months, or a little bit less than that. And I know Jim could answer all of the finer details, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have on this. And we'd love to do this on every one of them. Obviously, we don't have the money to do every one of them right now, but I think once people see this one there, they'll see that it really does address a lot of things at once. And I think you'll love the look of it and the feel of it and just the way it functions. So I'll shut up now and let you ask questions.
So Jim, do you have anything that you would like to go into more detail or explain this project to us? Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Leslie.
I think Fred's hit on most of it. The only other things I would add is we've been doing our little campaigns and going through our approval processes. We've gone through, the Public Works Committee. We've gone through the Reimagine Committee. We've gone to Planning and Zoning, all those, and gotten very positive feedback for this project. So I think we're getting to the point where we'd like to look into getting the conditions released so we can get a contractor lined up so that we can look to move this forward to construction once the weather breaks in the spring.
So one of the things that neither one of you have mentioned are the cost of this project for this intersection. Jim?
So the cost, as we've calculated it, it's around, with all the contingencies that we put on it, it's around $300,000. Some of that is being paid out of the fund for that, but then there's also a significant number of ADA improvements that we're doing as part of this project, that would be necessary whether or not that we would be doing this project. There's ramps and so forth that are not currently in compliance that need to be brought up to current codes. There's also handicap parking stalls that don't quite meet the code requirements that we're making improvements on. So we're utilizing some of that. In addition, as part of the overall Greenwich Avenue project, which isn't the same project, but is similar, tied to this, we've done a lot of inventory of the utilities in there. There's a couple drainage issues that we need to take care of as part of, and we want to do that before we do this project so that we don't have to take parts of this project out to make those repairs if we needed to as we move forward. So there's a little pieces there that we think we can fund this whole project through various appropriations we currently have, and then this release of conditions.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff Raymer?
You're on mute, Jeff.
Jeff, you're still on mute.
Unmute.
Can't
Okay.
hear you yet, Jeff. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Now you can. I mean, candidly, I was somebody who was not in favor of taking the police off the avenue, but I would have to say that, well, it hasn't wholly changed my mind. I thought that as from an aesthetic standpoint, the rendering made this intersection look extremely attractive. I think it's a real plus on the avenue. It undermines a bit. I'm not quite a believer yet, Fred, but I'm getting there a little bit. Can I take you to Jim? Can I take you to your Appendix E, which had the dollar figures? I just want to understand the sources of the funds. I don't have the original appropriation in front of me, but I thought it was $200,000. Do I have that right?
Correct.
So looking at Appendix E, in the first grouping, the streetscape quantities, including the contingency, you pretty much expend the $200,000. The remaining two items, the ADA quantities and the drainage quantities, refresh my recollection if you can. Those are amounts that are already appropriated, and there's some residual funds that were left there from that. Is that what's happened?
Correct. Both of those we have. If you recall, DPW has put in for ADA funds annually. We get an annual account. Recently, it's been around $200,000, somewhere in there, and that we utilize that for maintaining ADA facilities, improving ADA facilities, upgrading stuff when it comes to, it's kind of like a maintenance account, but it's strictly for ADA improvements where we deal a lot with ramps, push buttons, etc.
So where you're showing, for example, on that item, where you're showing 67,300 and small change to come out of ADA funds, those are ADA funds that are already appropriated. They're funds that are already available to you. Is that right? You're not looking for any new money on that item.
There's no new money being asked out of this.
And so too, the category for drainage quantities, that comes to 31,400 and small change. That too, those are funds already appropriated. There's some residual funds already available to you.
Correct.
So the nearly $300,000 that's involved, you're then proposing to do this fully out of funds that are already there. The release of the contingency just simply gives you the green light to go forward. You're not looking for any new money, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's good. No, I have nothing else. Thank you, Mrs. Darkington.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Leslie?
Leslie, you're muted.
Sorry. I just want to follow up on Jeff's questions and comments about the financing of it, because this is a little different than most projects that come to us. Most projects, we get one appropriation for a project and it covers all the costs related to it. If you go back to the CIP sheets from last year, the primary account that you're funding this from about improving intersections on the avenue, for $200,000 does refer to 2 intersections, not 1. So the CIP sheet was put together at a time where you probably had preliminary estimates and you weren't sure the scope of the project, but it sounds like it was a different scope than you're envisioning now. Is that correct?
At the time, we wanted to look at the design aspect of a couple different intersections, both the Arch Street and the Havemeyer. And the construction piece we intended only to be for one of the intersections, but we have been looking at and exploring opportunities for also the Arch and Havemeyer intersection and working on the design concurrently. But that one presents a fair number more challenges, but the construction piece is what we're looking for here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
May I ask a question on that, though, Leslie? I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize. Because the sheet, which I also have in front of me, does say to mitigate traffic and safety concerns, the adjustments are going to be made to the 2 intersections and so forth. The way I read the sheet and the way I certainly understood it was this was for both intersections. And I think in our discussions, we primarily talked about Arch Street, Havemeyer. So I was surprised to see this intersection come in as first. As a pedestrian who's on the street probably most every day, this is my downtown center. And I drive through that other intersection. Again, not under the COVID as frequently, but otherwise, certainly at least daily. I was surprised to see the other intersection not being presented at the same time or first.
Yeah, and I think the challenges that we've come across, and also thinking about not necessarily just looking at strictly addressing the safety concerns, but also wanting to make this a sense of place, adding some character to the location, adding some landscaping, all these pieces of this project. We felt that if we're going to touch this intersection, make some improvements, we want to do a nice job. We want it to look nice. We want it to be attractive. With the rendering that we provided, we've spent some extra enhancements there. We're adding some benches and so forth that are not currently there. We really want to add something to this. And yes, that does come at a cost, but we think that this being the kind of the center of town, that it's very much worth the extra funding and looking at that.
Good for you.
So back, just if I can continue.
Yes, Leslie, I'm sorry, I interrupted
okay.
you, but I wanted to get you were talking about the sheet. I wanted to make sure we covered that.
And you and I had the same question, so I think we needed to resolve that. And I'm just asking these questions, I think, with my BET hat on and making sure that we're understand the financing and how it impacts other projects. I think, as Jeff said, I think the renderings look great, and it will change the feel on the avenue as this moves forward by adding the greenery and makes it more pedestrian friendly. But does taking money or does using some of the appropriations that you have in the other 2 accounts, stormwater maintenance and ADA projects, change any of the priorities that you had for other projects in those capital items?
We don't see that this is going to significantly impact our priorities in those locations.
But you'll probably get less done than you anticipated. Those are annual projects, so I understand that there's often some money that doesn't get fully spent in 1 year, and there's an ongoing list. But if there's an impact to those projects, I think it'd be fair to identify what, whether there's a significant impact or just a modest impact. I wanted to ask about, I don't know whether the outdoor dining on the avenue and how that will move ahead after our COVID experience, but how does especially on West Elm, you're putting in the same 4 spaces that exist there, and I see that the parking is impacted just in 4 spaces on the avenue, but this design does work in collaboration with how we're using that space right now with the restaurants?
Yes, correct. When when we've been looking at this, it's I've assigned the same team, Jason Kaufman and his group, that have been working on Greenwich Avenue since 2015 or so, and also have been pretty instrumental in helping us with the review of the outdoor dining. So we're trying to keep everybody in thinking long term of, if there is going to be the outdoor dining continue, which we think will be occurring, how will this impact this? And this shouldn't have a big problem accommodating that.
Okay. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Leslie?
Andy?
Several quick questions. I also applaud the graphic design. I think it's beautiful. The ongoing maintenance for the plantings wasn't estimated. I assume it's not much, but do you have any thoughts on how much it would cost to maintain the proposed plantings?
From what we've talked with Parks and Rec, the plantings that they plan to place in there, it would be part of their generalized operating expenses, and all the plantings are stuff that would require once or twice a year type maintenance, not weekly type maintenance.
Okay. And also, if you could confirm the release of 200,000 would be sufficient to complete the project, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the this is replacing the presence of a police person there at the intersection. My guess is, just back of the envelope calculations, that the payback is pretty quick on this project. It's not a long-term payback, given the $300,000 cost. Anyway, so I guess my point is, I hope that once this is completed, we can certainly try to move on to the next location at the end of Arch Street and Greenwich Avenue. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, we're exploring all the different intersections, so I hope to have something in front of you in the near future.
Yeah, just to I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I think you're going to say the same thing I was going to say, but please go ahead and you speak.
Okay, thanks. Yes, that's true. There's will be a cut in head count, a couple, but we had already planned to redeploy officers, and they're already there on the avenue. So I just want to make sure that we don't have the narrative that we're taking away officers on the avenue. There's more there now than ever before. And the bicycle, which I just found out a few minutes ago, they're walking the beat in uniform, and they're also there in plain clothes. And the ones on the bicycles, I just thought were going to be there for 3 seasons. They're going to be on the bikes for 12 months a year, except for when it snows. You won't see them Thursday, but the guys just told me they're going to be there on the bikes. They're braver than me. But we are going to be super protected on the avenue. Just I think Leslie was getting nervous when she heard that, so I just wanted to make sure she's.
I don't know which Leslie we're talking about.
Leslie Target. I'm looking to my right. Sorry. Yeah, there's going to be plenty there. So and they're already there, and we're happy about that. The redeployment. So thank you.
And the chief had recommended these intersection improvements. He spoke in support of these intersection improvements, that if you're going to be taking the traffic cop off the avenue, that these improvements added to the safety. And I can see what he was talking about. Jim, is there an interface between this project of this or even a second intersection and the work that was done, funded at least over the last 2 or 3 years, for locating and inventorying of the the subsurface conduits, wires, pipes, etc.?
Yeah, that's all being handled by the same team in engineering, Jason's team, and that's part of the Greenwich Avenue, what's called the Greenwich Avenue Streetscape Project, and we've been funding that. They have done a decent inventory of all that information. We have it all available internally, and we're utilizing it as we start looking at all these different intersections and the long-term improvements to the Greenwich Avenue repaving that hopefully will be happening in the next couple of years here.
So when you have items on your capital costs here, for excavating and installing electrical trenching and the like that ties into when the location of these conduits now. Is that it?
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing else with starting with.
Leslie or Ann?
I had one unrelated question, and I try not to ask these because this is not my line of expertise. But I noticed on the lighting, you're redeploying the existing light poles and lights. Was there any advice you had gotten about modifying the lights that we have on the avenue? Either increasing or changing the type of fixture?
So we continue to work with the lighting with our consultant who's doing the overall streetscape project. The lighting on the avenue, as you may or may not be aware, is under Eversource's jurisdiction, but they have been working with us on possible changes to the fixture heads and so forth that may increase the amount of light there. We've experimented with one light near Tiffany's that's actually the new version of the same design. So if you were to look at the one that's directly in front of the Tiffany building, it's actually the new version, and most people wouldn't even notice that it's any different than any of the other ones when you visually look at it, but it does provide a slightly different foot candle number. But we are taking that into consideration, and that even if Eversource decides that they want to change some of this out, some of the work that we have to do is because we're asking for these things to be moved, that's why we have some cost to it. But it isn't a full replacement. They would be potentially responsible for full replacement if they decided that that was necessary.
Thank you.
So keeping on lighting, there are some things here. I mean, when we go back to the meeting that we had in the budget committee talking about this and for our approval, one of the things we did talk about was that Greenwich Avenue is underlit. And, we replaced Cobra lighting, which basically lit the roads and cast a wider light with these other type of lighting, which I think may be more attractive, but unfortunately don't produce as much light and don't shed it so far. Those aren't technical terms, as we all know. But as I looked at this plan, one of the reasons, I was on the downtown committee and worked on that, that we didn't necessarily recommend something like these bump outs with those lights is people come down Greenwich Avenue. And so as you come down Greenwich Avenue, and this was, input from other people in other places, you're descending it, and particularly with older people, these lights at one point become eye level with the lights, and they're out closer to the road. So I think it concerns me that actually we may be creating more danger. I mean, first, let me go back. I think the overall improving Greenwich Avenue and these all of the intersections and the look and greenery and really cutting back those trees, which are just, need to desperately be pruned. They shouldn't be hanging over any buildings or anything. But I think in terms of the lighting, that needs to be thought through, and whether, I think when we were on that committee, Eversource recommended that there be Cobra lighting on diagonal corners at the intersections. And I think that is something that I would suggest, just as a person who spends a lot of time crossing through these intersections and a person who is on Greenwich Avenue just about every single day, walking or whatever. I do all my errands. This is my downtown area, needs to be addressed. But I'm very concerned of the blinding aspect of that. A couple other comments here. I have been a supporter of the policemen. I know Fred and my view are a little bit different here, but I do think, as you look back and you look today, their presence, and I talked to a couple of the guys on bicycles, whatever, but their presence is important because you know that they are there. And one of the things, I think the Board of Selectmen approved something in the past week, people after this COVID seem to be driving more aggressively and faster. We certainly are seeing it as cut-throughs in our neighborhood. We're seeing it, I guess the decision that was made by the Board of Selectmen. And again, these are neighborhoods, but, talking with some policemen on Greenwich Avenue, they've commented on the same thing, post-COVID. So I think we need to, I don't know how we address that, but it is a danger. I think that the other thing that we need to think about is what I agree, we need to beautify it. It's wonderful after all these years of providing these Greenwich Avenue appropriations to finally see some plans come to provision. That's superb. And that's the very positive part of it. But, when we go back to values and what makes Greenwich special, as much as they may not, whatever. I mean, I think the policeman in the avenue, other things, when Andrus Duaney came to Greenwich, now, whenever it was, a long time ago, and I wasn't participating in it, but I understand that he commented the two things that make Greenwich so special: policeman in the avenue, and we had both Katie DeLuca and we had Lauren Elliott bring both of those things up at the budget hearings in February. And also the green benches, which he said apparently, or whatever, were produced or whatever by the DPW, because it's very unique and very special to Greenwich. So I, want to make those comments on the uniqueness. I happen to be very concerned about waste barrels and newspaper racks and everything. I think we need, in Greenwich, I think we're very visible globally, and I think we need to be more concerned about security and what goes where. That's a personal thing. I'm always concerned about those kind of things. And I just want to I think simpler happens to be better. But most important is protecting our value. And the value of our properties on Greenwich Avenue, we need to think about how can we make them more valuable. And this, I think, is working on a streetscape is fabulous. And I agree with that. But we have to think about, where do we find more valuable space than Greenwich Avenue in terms of retail? And maybe it's Madison Avenue, maybe it's Rodeo Drive. But really, you've got just like hardly any places. And so let's not lose sight of the revenues generated by this very special area. And let's not, I'm not the right person here, but I do think that this needs to be coordinated with our tax assessor and others to, make sure we understand that whatever we're doing is a vision that's really going to retain or increase our values. And I think that some of the things we've been doing on an interim basis also have really been very helpful, keeping this sort of lively view of Greenwich Avenue. I probably have a few more details here, but I think that's kind of an overview, of, some comments that I might have on this this project. And I just want to see if, I guess I feel particularly concerned because, I've been chair of the law committee. I've been on that law committee for 6 years, just to make sure that, our lighting and that we're not doing something that could create more risk to us. I'm very, Jim, I hope you will take a look at that.
Leslie,
Yeah.
Can I call the question at this point?
I was just about ready to, I was just checking, make sure I could know more. I don't think we have called the question on the BET.
I was gonna say, all your points are well taken and noted for future and including this design. So thank you for your comments.
Okay,
I would Andy's motion to approve.
Oh, no, I was going to ask, is there a motion for this?
I move that we approve the release of conditions.
Yeah, seconded.
Okay.
And
so I'm going to call for an individual vote. So Andy, you are a
yes.
And Jeff, you are a,
Yes.
and Leslie, you are a,
Yes.
and I am going to abstain for now. So our vote is 3-0-1.
3-0-1.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred, Jim, and Jason. Good work, and keep up the good work. And I'm anxious, though. I'm very
Thank you.
anxious to see what Arch Street and Havemeyer is going to look like.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Be well, everybody.
Okay, so we move on to new business. Pete, you want to give us a
tag?
Oh my goodness gracious, you're right.
Are
Moving
they-
ahead too fast. So we have
No.
Peg here and
They're not still on the phone, are they?
what?
What's
Oh, Mike Miller is there.
Mike Miller has his hand up. We need to bring up Mike Miller.
Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Hi.
This is
Okay,
Bob
I'm
and
promoting
Dennis.
you.
Mike, do you have anyone with you?
He's coming up.
No, just
Veteran?
Hi, can you hear us?
we can. Do you have anyone with you, Mike?
Yes, this is Mike Miller and Deb Vetramile at TAG.
Hi, Deb. How are you?
I am good. Hi, everyone.
So welcome. Thank you for being patient. Okay, do you want to give us an update on progress and request for release of conditions?
Absolutely. Just
Please.
in the picture, Deb, maybe you should come around.
We know it hasn't been an easy time.
No, it hasn't been. I wouldn't recommend this for any other organizations, but having gone through a crisis restructuring in 2018 and 2019, it seems like we have had quite a bit of preparation for the crisis that we're now trying to manage through as well. As we had to deal with in 2018 and 19, we had no cash, and we had a constantly changing landscape that we could not control. And that seriously continues as we're navigating through the COVID crisis now in town. At our last session, which unbelievably, because we, for a long period of time, were meeting with the BET on a monthly basis or every few months, it's now been 6 months, which is probably the longest that we've been away from the BET in several years. So we're happy to be back, and hello again. And I won't go through all the detail that we discussed at our last meeting, which basically we talked about how our programs, the Feed Greenwich programs came to be, and what we've been doing. But I will take everyone through what we have done from the last quarter of our last fiscal year through where we are today, and where we expect to be for the remainder of this fiscal year through June of 2021. I'll do that pretty briefly, but we're prepared to go in as much depth as everyone would like. And then
I think highlights will be great.
we're certainly going to start with the highlights. So, and we also have financials, which we can discuss as well if anybody has any questions with them. So with respect to meeting the needs of the community as the crisis hit, we immediately changed our mission or moved it to something so that we could accommodate the evolving crisis. And that was three steps. We would work closely with town leadership and town agencies to continue meeting community needs through the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. We would stand prepared to resume providing neighborly service from day one upon town agencies that we do business with upon their reopening. And three, despite all the uncertainty surrounding the crisis, manage the COVID-19 crisis response and the operations to a targeted neutral cash flow during our the remainder of our fiscal year 2020 and for all of 2021. We're not talking beyond 2021, even though it is entirely likely that the economic impact and therefore food delivery requirements could very well extend beyond June. So where we are today is we started in March, late March, with preparation and then the startup of the Feed Greenwich program with Department of Human Services and Neighbor to Neighbor as our partners. We had two programs, one with Department of Human Services, Neighbor to Neighbor, called Feed Greenwich Families. And we also started a second program with the Board of Ed called Feed Greenwich Students. The Board of Ed program ran to the end of June, at which point the yellow bus service continued on. But up through June, we were delivering food that was prepared at the high school. We were delivering to the middle schools and the elementary schools in neighborhoods, so that kids who normally receive, students who normally receive meals at school would have access to those meals in their local neighborhoods. With respect to the Feed Greenwich Families program, it started off with serving over several hundred residents, quickly grew to over 1,000 residents, and over this period of time through today, we've served well over 2,000 Greenwich residents. We started off, as I mentioned, with zero cash reserves as a result of coming out of our restructuring in 2018 and 19. And our expectation going into this year, which was July of 2020, and we planned for that in February of 2020 when we submitted our plan. We expected a break-even cash flow for this year. And through February of 2020, we were actually running where we expected to be for the 2020 fiscal year. Our major fundraiser in March was scheduled for late March. Then everything broke loose, and obviously that was canceled, and we shifted operations on a dime 100% towards both of our Feed Greenwich programs. Coincident with that, we had to go out and reinsure, enter the insurance market, and our brokers at RAND entered the market in March, and obviously that was not an opportune time to be remarketing your insurance. So of the $941,000 plan that we had set up for fiscal 2021, as our insurance was remarketed, an additional $60,000 of insurance on top of what we had planned needed to be forecast for, and figured out a way how we could pay for that. So our original $941,000 plan quickly became a $1,001,000 target that we needed to figure out how to achieve appropriate funding for. So when we attempted to initiate the new program in late March, having had zero cash in our bank accounts, we attempted to initiate a stake that would allow us to start the program. And so reached out to the SBA, and this was before anything was on the horizon, which would ultimately become PPP. Attempted to get what was then an EIDL loan, an economic injury disaster loan, because it looked like it fit our requirements. That was something available to organizations in disasters such as Katrina and Sandy and others. Thought maybe we might be able to reach out and get some funding under that. But before we could continue that process, Congress came through with the PPP program under CARES, and we ultimately were in a great position to move forward with that, having worked with our local banker to set up an EIDL application. We immediately switched to PPP, and we're one of the first truly small organizations to be on the doorstep of the SBA day one when the PPP program dropped ready for applications. And as such, in early April or mid-April, excuse me, we were one of the first organizations funded under the PPP program, receiving $95,500 under that program. In addition, I had reached out to our friends at Town Hall, the First Selectman's office, and Ben Branyan had helped with us go through this, as well as reaching out to the Department of Human Services, one of our partners in the Feed Greenwich program, to see if there were opportunities to redeploy some existing budgeted funds. At that point, Dr. Barry mentioned he would see what he could do. And ultimately, he was a hero, coming through with $54,000 of previously budgeted funds that could be redeployed within the Department of Human Services to support the Feed Greenwich program. And so with the PPP funds and the Department of Human Services contribution of $54,000, we were able to start the Feed Greenwich program. And then that followed with some donations from the community and additional foundational grants following. Shortly after that, as we had put in an application for Cdbg award, CDAC at Cdbg, as well as the First Selectman approved tag for 96,000 of the first Cdbg COVID-19 funding awards. And although we haven't yet received those funds, we're told they should be coming sometime soon. It's our first go around with receiving funds from the Cdbg in such a large amount. So it has had quite a significant impact on our cash flow to not have yet received those funds, but we are very much looking forward to receiving those funds shortly. In addition, we were very happy to hear that the town, through its BET, had reaffirmed our fiscal year 2021 budget and support for $279,000. And so as of the end of May, although we didn't have everything where we needed it to be in terms of cash, we knew that there was money coming in the pipeline that will allow us to continue to operate through the summer. And the reason why I'm calling phase one March through May, initially when we went into lockdown in the community, there was an expectation that we would try and come out of lockdown on May 21st. As we got closer to that date, unfortunately, it became apparent that that we would be maybe not in lockdown, but certainly would need to be separated, which meant many of the agencies that we do business with would not be reopening for some time soon. And the next expected opening date or reopening date for the community was at the beginning of the school year. And so that was the next target as we moved into phase two, which was June through August of 2020. During this period of time, we say we were feeding the need in the community through, as I mentioned, 2,000 plus food insecure and homebound Greenwich residents, which the Department of Human Services has told us is about 10% of the economically at-risk resident population in the town of Greenwich. It's a huge number, but it is an accurate number. And we went through a very interesting period during this phase two. It was a period where we were able to raise substantial funding from outside the community. In addition to the PPP funding, which had been raised previously and came through in April, the SBA essentially came back to us shortly after our meeting with the BET Budget Committee in early June. In mid-June, received word back from the SBA that if we were still interested in an EIDL loan, we might be we would qualify for that. And so before they finished saying that via emails and some telephone conversations, the response was, yes, please. We were told that we were approved for a $150,000 loan, the terms of which are very favorable. It's a 30-year term loan. The first year is interest-free, so it goes negative amortization, but the interest rate is under 3%. It's 2.75%. So about 4% of $4,000 of interest gets accrued in the first year, and then over the next 30 years, the loan gets amortized. The annual amortization on the loan, typical mortgage loan with 2.75 for 30 years, it turns out to be less than $8,000 a year. It's a very, very favorable amortizing loan for us, and one that we can very easily carry. During this period of time, I'd also been in discussion with our bankers who, previous to COVID, we had talked about our existing line of credit, which was $175,000. We had told our bankers that we were prepared over the years, over the coming years, post our restructuring, that we would be able to pay off, we thought, about $25,000 a year in principal on that existing balance. Where did we expect this was going to come from? Over 2019 fiscal year and our 2020 fiscal year, before one-time expenses related to our restructuring, and the one-time expenses are primarily unemployment expenses, but we also had some one-time expenses related to a relocation as well. They were averaging $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Coming to a break-even number on cash flow each of those years meant that on a recurring basis, TAG was essentially having a surplus on an operating basis of over $60,000 each year. And so we felt that we could continue that, certainly at a $50,000 level as we went forward. And with $50,000 of surplus on an ongoing basis, could easily accommodate a $25,000 principal pay down on our line of credit year after year after year, to the point where we figured that 5 years down the road, we'd be to a 50,000 level, and that would be an appropriate level of ongoing line of credit for the organization. As a result of all the financial restructuring that took place with the SBA loan coming in for the EIDL loan of $150,000, one of the discussions that I had with our bankers was, would it be possible to, instead continuing on with this line of credit, could we now term out this line of credit, and would we be approved for that? Our banker took it back to the credit committee, and in July we were approved for a 2-year term loan. I had told our banker that as a show of good faith in June, previous June, we would pay down, instead of $25,000, which we had anticipated, we would pay down $50,000 of the $175,000 line of credit, which had been outstanding for several years during our restructuring. And so we had a remaining balance of $125,000 on that line of credit. We received word in July that we were approved for the term, 2-year term loan. They asked what terms did TAG think would be comfortable, and I suggested at the time we could probably pay down $50,000 the next June, meaning June of 2021, and the remaining $75,000 of June of 2022. This was speaking with them at a time where we assumed that the COVID crisis had an end date that might be a little sooner than we actually see it might have from an economic standpoint. But in any case, we should have the ability to service that term loan at least for this next year, and then we'll see how things go into the following year. So our expectation was we come into this year at the end of June, having broken even on an operating basis cash flow, bringing in $150,000 in June from an SBA EIDL loan, and then paying $50,000 to pay down part of our line of credit, and then in July taking on a $125,000 term loan, retiring the remainder of that line of credit. And so now that would give us the financial flexibility to have some cash flow and cash balances, some liquidity, to work through at least the early months, which turned out to be the mid months as well, of this ongoing crisis. And it served us well. We were able to get through most of the months up until the end of November without too much difficulty. But now we're essentially on financial fumes. And how did we get here? Again, we didn't know what to expect with respect to when the Cdbg funds might be available. We'd expected maybe September, October, Cdbg funds would be available to us. In fact, the contract from HUD was signed for the funding in October. And as I said, we're still waiting on those funds. So we're in a temporary period where we have a little bit of a cash crisis, but we're trying to manage through that as best we can.
Have you communicated with Tyler Fairbairn that you're, this, just to make sure that, with community development block grant?
Yes, we've been in contact with Tyler, and as I said, we're expecting, based on Tyler's response to us, that the difficulties that have been working through in terms of some of the language with the law department are being worked through, and it's now expected that we're probably just a matter of a few weeks away from receiving funding. So that's we're very much hoping that that's what happens here. In addition, what has been going on in phase 2 from June through August was some of our agencies and some of our operations started reopening. We had a period where we had suspended service with Nathaniel Witherall because of some of the COVID risk. In fact, one of our employees who did provide service to Nathaniel did go down with COVID for several weeks. And another of our employees who has a wife that works in the healthcare industry, he contracted COVID as well, and he was out for close to a month. Both of those employees returned, and we have, thankfully, I'm knocking on wood here, so far no other employees who have been down with any COVID illnesses since. In addition to Nathaniel restarting in July, and I will say this, we've recently had to suspend them as well as COVID's resurfaced. But as Larry has mentioned, they're working through that, and we're hopeful to reestablish service for their employees as soon as their COVID under control again. In addition to Nathaniel, our dial-a-ride service, which had gone down to close to zero, just a few residents who wanted dial-a-ride rides, has now resumed to about 50% of its pre-COVID levels. And we discussed with the state in the middle of the summer because the state was wondering if we were closed, and I told them that no, we were not closed. In fact, we've been open every day through the COVID crisis. And instead of bringing people, part of our dial-a-ride rides are bringing several of our residents to shop in local supermarkets. Instead of being able to bring our residents to supermarkets to shop, we are now bringing food from our Feed Greenwich program directly to our residents' front door. When the state heard that, they agreed to continue our funding that had been approved, and so $73,000 that we receive annually in 3 installments from the state has continued throughout. And our next funding, we're actually submitting an invoice shortly, so Mr. Minarski will have his typical sign-off as we go through this in a matter of days. And that brought us through the end of August. The only other item that took place during that period of time, we were, as we had been for over a year and a half, been in negotiations with our landlord to restructure our lease, and we became very close to finishing our lease negotiations. And as we moved into phase 3 in September, we actually did complete our lease negotiations and entered into a new lease retroactively effective July 1st, 2020. And it's a 5-year lease, and it basically takes the place of an existing 5-year lease with total payments over those 5 years, which will be over $200,000 less than the payment obligations on our previous lease with our landlord. It reflects that we require much smaller space, and we moved into a lower level of the existing location. And so we were able to have a much lower rent as a result of that. And it certainly helps us move forward with our operations at an appropriate level.
So this all sounds like great progress, like you've been very busy. So is there any other highlight you'd like to provide? You know,
so
and then I think we're supporters.
I'm just going to take you through the remainder, which is very quick, from September through the remainder of June 2021. These are our expectations. We will maintain food delivery support for the vulnerable residents over an extended crisis period of damaging economic and health impacts to the community. And obviously, we believe this could go well beyond June of 2021. In our weekly deliveries, which had been about 3,000 pounds of food per month before the fall months, as fall came in and much of our produce, and by our, I'm talking about neighbor to neighbor's produce that they have sourced, has now come in the form of canned goods and other goods that soups and others, which are much heavier. We've seen the weekly delivery amount that we're bringing by weight. We are delivering 300% more by weight to our Greenwich residents each week, whereas it had been 3,000 pounds a week. It's now over 9,000 pounds a week. We surpassed 100,000 pounds delivered to the community in October. It's entirely possible with this increase in deliveries that we will exit the year at June of 2021 with 300,000 pounds or more of food delivered to the Greenwich community. We are reducing our insurance as a result of the $60,000 increase that we have. We look for ways to blunt that increase. And one of the ways in working with our friends at RAND, we found that we could take several of our vehicles that were not being used and put them under a comprehensive policy only. And so we were able to do that and reduce our premiums to just the property value. And so much reduced premiums, as well as we went through and we had planned for the replacement of some of our vehicles, which was causing a tremendous amount of maintenance and repairs. The few vehicles that we've replaced, as we were able to take them off, instead of ratably receiving return premiums over the remaining life of our insurance contract, we were able to accelerate and get the entire return premiums in cash back to us. And so we've had a tremendous reduction of our total insurance premiums. Near term, obviously, we will pay those premiums over term, but it did help our cash flow, both in terms of retiring some of our vehicles, as well as getting the return premium receipts up front. We also reduced expenses. In total, our reduction in expenses is over $100,000. We've reduced payroll. We've looked for volunteers to help our drivers. So several of our part-time drivers, we were able to not have them be on as many hours, and some of them we've they've gone off and done other work during this period of time. We hope to bring them on when our agencies come back online. Also, the rent that I talked to you about before, we have much reduced rent coming through for the remainder of the year as a result of that new rent agreement. And we also are looking at other areas in our headquarters expenses wherever we can find them to reduce expenses as well. So having said that, what we're also looking to do and have been through the beginning of this is raising funds. And with the Cdbg funds that we've also raised, as you've seen with the Cdbg list, this second go round with the 386,000 that's come to the community, we also put in an application on that. And through the Community Development Advisory Council, as well as the First Selectman's Office, we've so far been approved for $65,000. We have applications in for the Community Investment Program at the United Way. We have several other applications and other organizations, both foundations and individuals within the community. And we were just notified of an additional $10,000 grant that we're receiving from the Greenwich Board of Realtors, which we're very happy about. So things are coming in a way that we hope of the 200,000 that we need to raise for January to get us from January through June. We feel we're about a third of the way there so far, and our confidence is raised by all of the great work and all of the wonderful town residents and organizations that have helped us navigate through this process. We're doing what we can, and certainly the community is supporting us every step of the way. So with that, I won't go through the financials yet until we go through some question and answer, and then I can go through whatever level of financials you'd like.
I think you've been very comprehensive, and of course, we're going to get together in February for the budget, I expect, for the budget department meetings, and obviously we'll expect TAG to be there too. At least that's what we're all hoping. So are there any questions? Do we have any questions, Jeff?
Yeah, a couple of things. First, on your summary sheet, the first financial sheet on your cash flow analysis, the first one we come to. So it looks as if you had originally planned to finish the year 53,000 to the good. You're presently forecasting about 50,000 less than that. You're expecting to finish the year about 3,000 to the good. Do I read that correctly?
That's correct. You know, as part of all of the reduction in the agency services.
So just stay with you a minute.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned that you'd received a PPP loan of $95,500. You're not showing that here in the revenue. Oh, that's been a forgiven loan, and that was used to reduce some of your debt. You have your debt shown on a different page, but you're not showing any of that $95,500 here as a revenue item, right?
So what I did not present this go round, but will be presented during our budget, is a comparison of fiscal year 2021 with fiscal year 2020. The PPP loan, and this is a cash basis statement that you're looking at. The PPP funds came to us in April, as I said, one of the earliest beneficiaries of the PPP program since we were in so early. That was our fiscal year 2020. And so when we look at the 2020 sources or all funds received, we will see in our revenues $95,000 from PPP funding.
Yeah, well, not exactly, because you show on when you're showing on your balance sheet later, you show the loan outstanding at the end of June, and then you show as of November, you show that item to be zero. So the forgiveness happened in the current fiscal year, I take it.
So we're in fiscal year 2021 for TAG.
Right.
So November of 2020 is fiscal year 2021, as it is, I believe, for the town as well. So when we go back to our fiscal year 2020, which ended in June of 2020, in April of 2020, the PPP funds arrived. And so from a cash basis representation, those funds would have been shown for the year of 2020, which we finished the year at essentially on an operating basis, essentially break even for cash. And then with the EIDL loan,
Mike, I'll leave you resolve that with your accounting people. I'm not quite
well,
sure.
but I'm not done. So if you'll allow me to finish,
All right,
the
sorry.
balance sheet that you're looking at, as you scroll back in the financial statements that were presented, 2 pages in advance to that, which I hope was copied to you, it shows that balance sheet and the income statement are both accrual-based balance sheet and income statement. So on an accrual basis, balance sheet and income statement, what you have is as of June 2020, even though we received the PPP funds in April of 2020, at that point in time, they were a loan to TAG. The loan did not get forgiven until November, well, basically September, when we submitted all of our documentation to our banker who is transmitting this to the SBA. And our banker told us at that point in time, we have satisfied all of the requirements for TAG's SBA loan to be forgiven. At that point in time, we then took those monies on an accrual basis into our financial statements. But up until that point in time, there was a difference between cash basis financials, where in April, the funds actually arrived, and accrual basis, you don't recognize those funds until the loan is forgiven, which for purposes of that, we accrued for in September of 2020, which is in fiscal year 2021 for TAG. And so as a result, on the November 2020 accrual-based financial statements, it shows no PPP loan because in September, that loan was reclassed to funding, revenue funding on an accrual basis.
I thank you, Mike. I did understand that. You mentioned also that you see $54,000 from Human Services. Is that reflected somewhere in the? I'm trying to figure out what these items are. 96,000 from Cdbg, but you haven't received that yet. That's not shown because you haven't actually received that yet. That's coming in the future.
So if you, again,
fees, they're calculating not just the cost of what it costs us to handle and transport and dispose of the trash, but they're also calculating a factor for what it costs us to handle the payment, meaning bank fees, credit card fees.
Can I ask a question? Are you concerned that fiscal 21, because we don't see the year-to-date versus budget from the department, but that you might need additional funds in 21 to cover that?
No, because the amount of tonnage that's being brought to the transfer station is way down.
Okay.
Okay.
Pete, is there anything else you want to explain to us? I mean, it looks good to me, but.
No, it just, the reminder is actually, it's to the BET, to the 12 of you. You've got this line item for $175,000, and it's not something you have to do today or this month, but you